there's two sides to every coin. Then there's a conversation you can join. But I'm an old dog and there's new tricks. And some of my opinions you just can't fix. 'Cause I'm an old man yelling at the sky. I'ma shake my fists at the clouds and cry. Get off my lawn, you snowflake, before I have a meltdown, breakdown, shakedown. 'Cause this is my hometown, so back down, sports clown. It's all just a game, and it's the last down, let down, cowtown. I said it's all just a game. I give the touchdown, the rundown, the lowdown. 'Cause it's over the game, gonna crack down and shut down the sundown. I said it's all just a game.
The show has just gotten remarkably better now that it has a theme song. And the first time in my career that I've actually had a theme song written for me, which well, that wasn't a parody or that wasn't intended to somehow, denigrate my programming. I'm thinking of you, Kelly Kirsch. Welcome. It is another week of Just a Game. I am me. You are you. Thank you for being here. And thank you to our brand spanking new sponsor, Ski Cellar Snowboard. You see him right there on well, you're going to see him here in a minute, actually, when we get our guests here, because our guest is here too. But when you see it, you'll know it, because they've been in Calgary for 76 years. 76 years. How many of you, there's a handful of you that have been alive that long, but not many of you, 76 years. So thank you to Ski Cellar Snowboard for joining us. They're going to present the guests, which we're going to have plenty. You can check them out online at skicellarsnowboard.com. 4 locations in Calgary: McLeod Trail by Chinook Center, 17th Avenue Southwest, just off of 14th Street, Bow Ridge Road Northwest, right by the McDonald's at the bottom of Windsport, and at Windsport at the Frank King Day Lodge. Not just skis and snowboards, anything you need to keep yourself warm. And it was snowing today. Anyway, we are so proud to have them on board. So congratulations to us for getting that kind of rub of having a company, a Calgary company, by the way, Ski Cellar Snowboard, on board. So looking forward to that. A little later on in the program, joining us will be Ryan Pike, the managing editor of FlamesNation. The Calgary Flames played one game over the weekend, and guess what? They won it. Not sure it's going to help in the grand scheme of things, but a 5-3 win over San Jose. Walker Duehr really kind of had his game going, but I like Walker Duehr. I think Walker Duehr is a good pickup. He's a good find. He's going to be a player on this team. But the bull that they rode on Saturday afternoon, not one you're taking to the finals. But what was significant on Saturday was the 900th career game of Michael Backlund. They honored him as they should. What a great story Backlund is. In 2007, at the draft in Columbus, he was scheduled to be a top 30 pick, a first-round pick, but he was coming off a year in which he was injured. He was certainly not as high profile as, let's say, as Patrick Kane or James Van Riemsdyk. Those were players that were selected ahead of him, way ahead of him. And I remember being at that draft in Columbus, and they had the availability the day before, and the TSNs and the Sportsnets of the world, and everybody was there. And back then you had lots of newspaper people too. They were all there. And, the Canes and the Van Riemsdykes were mobbed, and there was this young man sitting by himself, Michael Backlund. So I went up and started talking to him, and he was just a very shy young man. Nice, pleasant, but really didn't have a lot going on. And kind of as a throwaway question, I said, well, what would it be like if a team like, say, the Calgary Flames selected you tomorrow? And he lit up like a Christmas tree because, of course, he had come over for the Max Major Midget Hockey Tournament and was the MVP in the tournament the year before. So he billeted here in Calgary over Christmas, got to see the sights, loved the city, and all of a sudden there was a connection. Well, lo and behold, he gets drafted. The next day he comes and, joins us on the live program, and big smile. And he was so excited to be in Calgary. And that starts a journey that saw him represent Sweden at a World Juniors and then not go back, and ended up playing his first NHL game before he ever played in the Western League, but then went to Kelowna, had a successful run in Kelowna, and then has been in Calgary since. Early on, he was tasked with the unenviable position of being a young guy that might be the next great center for Jerome McGinley. Played a little bit with McGinley and Tanguay, handled it with great aplomb, was just always a nice person to be around. Early on, I think a lot of people said, I'm not sure, they should trade him, get something for him. And there was a lot of that. And I remember his second contract, there was a lot of people in this city who were praising him on Saturday that were also running him out of town a number of years ago. Good thing they didn't, because he's gone on to be exactly what he was presented as, which is a reliable 200-foot centerman who can take offensive draws for you, take defensive draws. He's been in the Selke conversation. He's one of his best offensive seasons this year. He should be the captain of this team. But I'll go one step further. More important than that, and our guest is going to attest to this. That's the on ice. The off ice, even better. He and his wife Frida have put so much back into this community. Frida just wrote a book on untimely passings, let's say it that way, for kids, which is really cool. They've been huge supporters of ALS, and of course that has a connection to the Snows and Snowy Strong, but also they have been an outstanding promoter and influencer for groups like Parachutes for Pets, which was a small group that I'm very lucky to find myself working with right now, that is working on medical issues, food issues, all of those things for our vulnerable population, the homeless, veterans, seniors, kids in foster care. The Backlunds have been there all along. Back home, he continues to give back to his community in the name of his friend who passed away from cancer a number of years ago. This is the complete package. This is the son that we all want to have. This is him. And he has been the draft pick that all teams should want to have. So congratulations to Michael Backlund on his 900th game. And who knows, maybe Matt Coronado will make it to 900 games as a Flame. He signed his 3-year entry-level contract after Harvard got beat out on Friday. He signed, I believe, on yesterday. First round, 13th overall back in 2021. Can't play in the American League, so he's probably going to play in the NHL. But whether or not it will be right away, I don't know. All right. More hockey a little later on. Really excited about our first guest. I've had a hit list of people that I wanted to have when I came back, because I want this show to be about Calgarians and people in Calgary and sport and good people. I also think it's important to profile role models and good people. So I have begun my personal campaign to go to all Starbucks locations in Calgary to find guests. And that's exactly what happened last Wednesday. I met Starbucks, and who's sporting a Colorado Mammoth jacket in this city? Can only be one man. When we were back on the old radio station, and I'll say this, I was telling him off the air, I think of the players that I've ever dealt with that could easily transition into this and had success in their chosen profession. That would be Nick Lewis, that would be Craig Conroy, and that would be our guest. He still to this day, you want to talk about you having your mind blown? To this day, as an active player, hosted his own show, which was incredible on its own. But to this day, I have never seen its equal or its duplicate. The day of a game, interviewed the coach from the other team as an active player. It's ballsy. It was brilliant. It was all of those sort of things. And I'm forever indebted for his friendship, because he's been just been a dear friend for 20 years now. Andrew McBride joins us. Ryder, how are you?
I'm great. Those are kind words from a mentor. I remember being back in state, trying to play lacrosse, kind of running out of options, saying, hey, I'm going to take a shot that Mr. Kerr will take me as our mentor for sports broadcasting, and kind of full circle to be sitting here with you.
Yeah.
And like I said, meeting you at Starbucks, excited to have you back on the airs. I think to be able to see you do this, which you were so passionate about, so great for the community. Someone that really, when I moved to Calgary, was a familiar face and voice. Great you're back in this, and it's amazing to be on your show.
Well,
Thanks.
I appreciate it. It's awfully kind of you, but it's a knife that cuts both ways, because I'm not joking. I'm meeting somebody at the Starbucks, and I've got my head in the clouds, and I'm going, oh, next week, and I look up, and it's, it's like, oh, the lights go off, they shine. There he is, right there. The Lord has presented Andrew McBride. You must ask. So I did. I'm like, I haven't seen you in a bunch of years, and I go, can you do next Monday? Sure, because that's who you are. But it's meant to be, and I'm so glad we get to spend some time together. Why aren't you doing this?
That's a good question, and maybe something that I could transition into. I think for my life, the last 5 years has really been focused on my kids. Kids, I was fortunate enough to be a stay-at-home dad during the week, something I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. The experience that's given me both as a father and being able to take that into the real world as a coach at a professional level, and now coaching my daughter coming up this summer, is something I'll cherish forever. And really fortunate to be able to do this. But I think now finding that identity of kids are getting a little bit older, kids are starting to find things that they're interested. Traveling is a lot with the Mammoth, trying to get back into avenues, and broadcasting is something I've always really thoroughly enjoyed. The people you get to meet, the experiences, the stories, the different way it brings people together. So something hopefully maybe I can definitely explore down the line.
We should make mention, yes, your full-time gig is you are the defensive coordinator for the defending NLL champion, Colorado Mammoth. I was in the building last year when you knocked off the Roughnecks on your way to a championship, and I've been dying to ask this question because nobody had the answer on our side. What did you say to Kurt after that made him so angry?
So this is, and you know what? I've had so many people ask me about that.
Okay.
So I'll give you the Coles Notes version. Number one, it wasn't me. The whole scenario played out by, we called a timeout with like 15 seconds left. Our star goalie was out. We were up 3 or 4 goals. I can't remember. We called a timeout. He took that a little bit personally for whatever reason. Sports is heated. He's a competitor.
He is a competitor.
He coached me. I played with Kurt.
Yeah.
One of the mentors in the way I implement some of my coaching styles in terms of preparation, but he was hot. And I think he was just taking that out on me. If anybody knows me, I run a little hot at the collar too. Emotions were going high. And I said, well, I'm not going to take this. I'm going to kind of push back a little bit and say, you know what, I'm going to stick up for myself. And it was 2 competitors at the end of a really, really important game, airing some grievances, and all good. I think that's sports. And you have to have the ability as a high-end athlete and coach to leave it on the floor. Yeah. That really is a big thing. So no harm, no foul.
No, and in fairness to a previous guest, Mike Board was on us a couple of weeks ago. And I remember asking Bordy afterwards, what was going on? I said, nothing. And then that was it. It's just it's heat of the battle and all those sort of things. But what did it, and we can get into the Mammoth a little bit more, but what did it mean for you to come into that building in the postseason and win that game?
Yeah, it's special for me. I mean, I always have a little more juice coming back into the building. I would be lying to say if I didn't wish I could have stayed in the organization outside of my playing days. And there were some talks. It just didn't work for a multitude of reasons on both sides. I mean, when you, for me, moved out to Calgary, spent 13 years here, did tons and tons of stuff in the community with Michael Backlund. I don't want to go off track, but
no, go ahead.
And I know you mentioned him. If you want to talk about an ambassador and an outstanding athlete in person, you look no farther than him. He was a guy who I did Special Olympic stuff.
Okay.
That would, every time he would see me, and he's a professional hockey player, he didn't know to go out of his way at all, would ask me, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
How's lacrosse? And genuinely care about what I was saying. It wasn't just, because most people forget your name. They're on to other things. They're the big pro athlete. But one of the most sincere, humble, just great ambassador for the city. So I couldn't be more proud for the career he is. And when you meet genuine, great people like that and see it translate, that's what sport's all about. So sorry to go off topic, but what a great human being and person to represent your organization.
No, it's you know what, it's he warrants it. He deserves it. I'm a little sensitive to all of that stuff going way back, more than a decade ago when Owen Nolan signed with the Flames, because when he signed, he had like 13 games to go to 1,000. And the Flames did an outstanding job of his 1,000th game, but he had played like 13 as a member of the Flames.
Right.
They got him a side by side. They did a whole tribute and everything like that. And I'm like, this guy, you drafted him. And not to say they did anything wrong, but I am a little sensitive that you take care of your own a little bit. Like when you draft, develop, and keep, and you get to play 900 games, you know what? You are the rare, you're the butterfly in all of this because you got drafted, developed, and stayed your whole career with one team. That does not happen.
No, and it's interesting to see now, looking back when you're kind of a little bit removed. It's lucky how it worked out for me to coach. But looking back, you kind of think like I had probably opportunities to go to other teams. And I was having a young baby, and you look back as an athlete now and you say, did I make the right decision? And when you put all the pieces, in reality, you only do have a short window to compete physically. Yeah. I think that's the big thing. But looking back, man, I gave everything I had to the city of Calgary. I've made lifelong friends to be able to run into you and come to this.
Yep.
So going to other teams now and seeing players like Dane and Curtis leave last year, it's something I do take a lot of pride and have a lot of respect for the organization to give me that length of time. And Backlund should be celebrated for that because it doesn't happen, and it will continue to happen less and less in the landscape of sports, in the landscape of social media, where the grass is always greener on the other side. And change in especially these young people's lives with the short attention span is becoming more and more, hey, let's change it up. And I think there's positives and negatives about it. I like how the younger generation says, hey, I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to move on. I'm going to do something different,
right? Which
I think maybe in our generation was, you stayed a little more at home. So positive and negatives, but I am fortunate and lucky. I don't count my stars for that.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask because you play in Denver.
Yeah.
To me, it was Ray Bourque who left the Bruins to go somewhere to win a cup. And then, there'd be others that would do that. Do you think in your scenario, it would have been any different had you not previously won 2 championships in Calgary? If you had gone over and got to the end the last couple of years, do you think you might have chased the cup?
Probably. Honestly, probably I would have. I think even seeing with the Mammoth last year, we had a group of guys that I think we had 2 or 3 guys that have ever won a championship. And the way they were defined throughout the lacrosse community and their careers is completely different now that they've won a championship. And being the coach, it was a very, very hard experience last year. Going into that final game in Buffalo, that is the most nervous I have ever been in my life because it's a very helpless feeling. Like you try to prepare the boys, you try to get everyone ready, you feel they're ready, but not being able to go out on the floor and understanding having won 2 championships and saw how it impacted my career in the community, how people talk to me as a player about saying you have a championship, the amount of pressure and the avenues I saw that saying, hey, if we lose this, these guys are going to be known as the team and the group. Great players, great individual talent, but couldn't get it done. It literally splits the road in half.
Yeah.
And I was so happy they got to take that path. So probably I would have chased it because winning ultimately is what you hear to play. And I think competition nowadays has turned into, it gets lost in the mud. It's muddied a little bit in the sense that there's so much going on in life. The seasons are so long that it's very hard to put the pinnacle of winning up on the pedestal. Do you know what I mean? Like, you chase the whole season, then the season ends. You're like, darn, I didn't win. It really is hard to win at any level. So yeah.
And you won young too, right?
Second
year, you won your first.
I thought I was going to win 10 more.
Yeah.
I really did.
Which is crazy because you hear that all the time.
Yeah, it's true.
Right?
That is a very, very true adage. Even if you get a taste of success, you think in your mind as an athlete, well, now we did so many great things. How can this not come? Yeah. And you quickly realize with the dynamic of people, with the dichotomy of a team, man, one person out, one person getting injured, one person having a kid changes everything. Yeah. When you get on a path of success, there isn't a more powerful thing in the world than mojo, swagger, momentum. These are real life terms. And I think it happens in life for sure, but sports is the microcosm of momentum.
Oh, it really is.
Yeah.
It really, really is because, when we have these conversations, I should point out, you are a Hall of Famer, right? 2016, the Delta Sports Hall of Fame, right? You're in a Hall of Fame.
That's right.
But we have that Hall of Fame question all the time. And that now, how much do you equate that championship? Like and I hate talking about players before their careers are over, but Michael Backlund hits 900 games and somebody says, well, is he somebody that you retire his number? How do you honor him? How is Michael Backlund a different Do we look at him differently with a championship? I think you do. I just think we always do with people that have rings, right?
Well, that's sports. That's why you
Yeah.
play the game. I think if you asked all these players, the ultimate goal is to win. Now, when it comes to retirement, people actually ask me a lot about that in Calgary. Like, is your number going to get retired? And I say, listen, I do not care if my number get retired.
You don't care.
Not at all. Not at all. My impact of what I did, to see people that I played with or coached with,
Right.
now coaching my kids, to see people I can run into in 20 years, that's my Hall of Fame. That's my retirement jersey. Relationships and the impact on other people is all you can ask for as an athlete.
Yeah. Okay. Let's make sure that we're all on the same page. If they called you, if Mike Board called you today and said, Brider, next year, we're going to put 37 up to the rafters.
Yeah.
You'd be on. That's not what we're talking about. No, you're not Mika Kiprusoff saying, I am not coming to get the Vezina trophy. I don't care. Right. Like, there's that, but you're just not like, it's not keeping you up at night.
No, I think some people are more upset about it than I am. Like, people actually get upset saying you were here for 13 years.
It's the first I'm hearing of people getting upset. What are you talking about? But I know, yeah, absolutely.
But I think some people, it was never a focus of mine. That was something I never chased. Would it be nice? Sure. Are there more appropriate people to put up there? Curtis Dixon, Dane Dobie. There's tons of people.
Yeah, but you're retired. They're not.
Yeah, but I would say if you ask me in all sincerity, Dane Dobie deserves to go up there before I deserve to go up there. Just because of his career, just because of the way he played, just because of his individual statistics. I was never a superstar player. What I was a great catalyst in a locker room that had many superstar players. I think my two biggest skill sets were my compete level. I really tried to pass that on. I always came to practice and competed at the highest level possible due to people like Tracy Koleski, who exemplified that before me. And they said, hey, Caleb, we're the captains and the leader of this team. If you want to be elite, this is how you act. This is how you play. This is how you hold yourself in the community. And I said, man, I want to be like these guys. Right. So this is the path I'm going to follow.
But the problem sometimes with halls of fame or the ultimate honors, however we determine them, having your number retired or whatever, is that I do believe you and your position is not sexy.
True.
Sorry, you're sexy.
Yeah,
your position is not sexy. You know what I meant?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, okay.
I do.
But, Kiprusoff is a no-brainer. And I think post-Kiprusoff, if anything, in this city has proven how good Kiprusoff was.
Sure.
Everybody just got so used to him that they started taking him for granted. Ginla, McDonald, those are numbers. But what you did, and, especially in lacrosse, it's just not flashy being a defender, right? There's he's loose balls. Like, who's winning loose balls? It's like offensive linemen in a way, right?
Yeah. Well, I think, being around sports as long as you have, and I've definitely learned that transitioning into coaching.
Yeah.
You need to have everybody in a multitude of positions. Like, you see the Johnny Gaudreaus and the best players that are the Kachucks that are going to put up. But the true identity of a team is the way the fourth line guy can impact the game like a first line guy into the team. And I think people that play on a team, you'll hear a real true team talk about the importance of different role players on that team. And yes, you need the superstars. Being a superstar at any sport, you are a special breed. You have something that the majority of people can't handle. But the value that the role players bring to enhance that superstar, that's what makes a great team. And it was no more evident with us last year losing our top two players. The way guys believed in their role, that even if I get 0 points, 0 loose balls, the importance of how I'm going to impact how our team is driven forward is just as important as the guy that's going to get 10 points.
So one last one on this topic, and it's kind of where we went with Backlund and a little bit with you, but do we need to readdress how we honor and the way we honor and take into consideration a more fulsome picture? Pete Rose is not in the Baseball Hall of Fame because he gambled on baseball. That was off the field. So we have used off-field transgressions to kind of exclude people from being honored before. Should we be doing the other way? You were one of the original ambassadors for Right to Play. You were with Special Olympics in Calgary. You did. There's nothing anybody could have done more humanly possible to try and promote lacrosse, promote the rough. You did all of that. Plus you were the captain of this team. You were all of that. That to me has gravitas. That has weight. Should that not, I'm not asking you this, but because it's not fair to you, but should we, in a more of a fulsome picture, be starting to include more of the off field, off ice in that discussion?
For sure you should, but
Okay.
that's just not the way society is built anymore. The way society is built is you're flashy, you put up the numbers, it's bright lights, and that's fine. I think the way people like myself operate is I can wake up in the morning
Yep.
and generally look myself in the mirror and said, I tried the best to impact individuals' lives,
Mhm.
to make the community in this sport a better place. And then reality, that's all the satisfaction I need. Ego, which I'm reading a lot about now, ego is such a strong and powerful thing with saying, I need more, I need accolades, I need this.
Yeah.
But a real strong man is someone that can look and say, man, I'm comfortable in my own skin. I know what I did. I don't need any. Sure, it's nice to go to a banquet and get a dinner, but I can care less. I'm in the Hall of Fame. I can care less about these All-Star games. I care someone I played with or a kid I coach can come back and say, hey, coach, great to see you. How's the family? Thanks for doing this. I'm playing because of a program, a school lacrosse program
Right.
you started, and now I'm giving back to that school. That's the stuff that's important to me.
He is our guest. He is Andrew McBride, brought to you by the Ski Cellar. They're now presenting our sport. Ski Cellar Snowboard, I should say, 76 years in Calgary. Check them out, skicellarsnowboard.com. Have you snow skated yet?
No, I have not.
Okay.
It sounds fast and dangerous.
We'll get to it, but it's kind of cool. Take me back to, let's talk about lacrosse in this province. Take me back to when you got here to today. How far have we come?
Crazy.
Is it?
Want to talk about Hall of Fame?
I do.
I am making a case for Brad Bannister to be in the NLL Hall of Fame.
Okay.
The fact that he is not in there, the fact that there's 17,000 people at Roughnecks games every week now is a direct indication of the opportunity that he presented and he brought to the province of Alberta.
Mhm.
Now, if people come along and added stepping stones, absolutely. Jeff Snyder with Elevate. There's tons of different people that have given back.
Don't give him.
No,
don't.
he knows.
Let's
I
not do
shouldn't
that.
even
No,
said that.
let's not do
Scratch
that.
that. Scratch that.
All right.
But
I know
it takes people to do that. So
Yeah.
it's really turned into something that's created so much momentum and is so special. To take my kids to the Roughnecks game and we had to buy and to see those fans, to
Mhm.
see people in the stands have that experience, to see people like this year when I coached my daughters play on lacrosse for the first time, I never wanted her to play. This is strictly organic. To see Mike Carnegie and Scott Carnegie's daughter, Sean Cable, Roughnecks, we've given back to see play. It's a really special place. The kids I coach now with the Raiders, 40 kids down in the States playing university on scholarships. It's a really special, and I take pride going back to the whole getting your jersey.
Mhm.
I take pride in having a small part in being able to see that these kids starting lacrosse at 7, 8, 9 years old, one of these kids' life is going to get changed because they played lacrosse. So really special. Is there a long ways to go? Yes. Is there challenges in amateur sports? For sure. Did COVID really hurt lacrosse? Absolutely. But what I think we're starting to see now is my age group and generation who's having kids is going to start getting back into the coaching, which is really going to help. BC and Ontario have had that for a generation.
Yes.
The Alberta generation is starting to happen now.
Yes.
And I think that's really going to translate.
Yeah.
to bigger and better
And
things.
that's kind of where I wanted to go with this conversation is that we're always looking for a quick fix, right? We want it done by next year. We want it done by next week. Really, we've got to start looking at some of this through the lens of, time. I think back to when Brad brought it to Alberta, there was no team in Edmonton. There hadn't been, there was a little bit of box lacrosse in Edmonton and I think a little bit here, but you really had to go to BC or Ontario. And I always said, Brad was not, it was not a good business model.
No.
It was not a good,
No, it was not.
right. But for him to fight, because minor pro sports in this country are hard and can be hard. And he fought as long as he could. And I agree with you. I think there's got to be some sort of builder category, some sort of recognition. If we now consider ourselves a lacrosse province, which I think we do.
For sure we are.
Right?
Yeah. Well, even the minors last year. So Junior A, who I coach and GM of the Junior A Raiders, the minors were 1 goal away from winning the Minto, which was absolutely unheard of.
Sure.
And it put people
Weren't they double-digit blowouts when we started in
record,
Alberta?
I think my record against the minors was something like 43-1. We literally, when we played them, lost 1 time to them.
Yeah.
So there's a perfect example of maturation.
Right.
But I think the people in lacrosse, you can't fake.
You're talking about when you were in BC, right?
Yeah, no. So this is when I coached the Raiders.
Oh, sorry. When you coached the Raiders,
Even as long as 5 or 6, 7 years ago,
Oh, really?
Edmonton won one game in like
Yes.
50 games we played.
Okay, sorry.
But with the development, with the coaching, you have guys like John Lintz who played
Mhm.
professional. It's all starting to trickle over to being successful. And to see that is amazing. But it comes back to Brad, passion. That's the one thing. In life, you can't fake passion.
Mhm.
You can't fake, like, I really care about this. And you're starting to get people that do care about this. And that will lead you in a really successful path. But it takes time, like you said. Culture,
Absolutely.
that's what people don't understand. The
Yeah.
culture of a team.
Yeah.
You don't have a great offseason. Calgary Flames, for example. You can't have one offseason and change the history of 20 years.
Mhm.
It really takes a 1, 3, 5-year plan with things really, really going right to switch the culture from a one of being in the middle or non-success to being successful. And lacrosse still is struggling with the culture of what it takes to be an elite sport. Now, things like getting into Commonwealth Games, we were back in the Canadian Games this year. We're on a great path to get in Olympics. These are all things that are going to help speed that culture up.
Which box lacrosse is on a path for the Olympics, or is it field?
You'll love this. So in typical lacrosse, they've created a new game, which is going to go in the Olympics.
Okay.
It's called sixes. So what it is,
So like rugby sevens?
bingo,
Yeah,
which
okay.
is an outstanding.
Which
game
is
to watch.
outstanding.
Oh, my
Absolutely, right?
Oh my God. And it's so
Yeah.
great for the kids now. So it's basically 60-second shot clock or
Yeah.
30-second shot clock on a field lacrosse goals, no big sticks, 6 players, back and forth. If you score a goal, there's no face off. The goalie picks it up, throws it down there. Elite entertaining sport. So do I think this is a future? For sure. More touches for kids in
Mhm.
minor systems,
Yeah.
fast pace, more control, not those lulls of what you're doing. So it's interesting to see, but therein lies kind of the fundamental issue with lacrosse. What other sport in the world would take a combination of the two sports that has no pro league and says, this is how we're going to get into the Olympics? But here we are.
Well,
I guess rugby, but yeah, I guess.
there's been at it. Sports have, I agree with you. I think 20 or 30 years ago, that was heresy, right? You can't change our sport.
Yeah.
But I think sports have, curling,
Yeah.
right? Curling's
Mixed curling, which was awesome.
Right. They've come up with some things. And I think 3-on-3, isn't 3-on-3 basketball at
Yeah,
some
you're right.
point?
Yeah.
Hey, good. Adapt. To your
Yes.
point, the
Yes.
biggest thing I heard in all of that you talked about 6-on-6 is more touches for kids.
Well,
And you cannot get enough of that, right? They
It's-
need to get it in the pocket. They need to be able to throw it.
it's something I'm really fortunate about now that my kids are at a young age. It's going to be very interesting. Just even the last 2 years of my kids playing sports. Before, when I coached, I had no invested interest. My
Mhm.
kids weren't in this. I was generally doing because I love sports. I'm passionate about giving back.
Yep.
Now, even in a short time, you really see how parental influence when you coach influences the development of a sport. So I think I hopefully can take my expertise in running the school program when I started it for the Roughnecks,
Mhm.
being the technical director of Alberta Lacrosse, coaching at a high elite level to really help introduce things that are going to make the kids experience better. Because in lacrosse, especially, we have a really hard time with people that haven't played at a high level.
Mhm.
I will never talk poorly about any volunteers. If we don't have parents that give back to the game,
Mhm.
we are in trouble.
Mhm.
But they do need some sort of expert. And I'm really going to take a lot of pride and hard work
Mhm.
in trying to help develop, especially girls lacrosse. So the U9 Fury just started 2 years ago. This is only going to be girls lacrosse. Before, you had to go play with the boys.
Yep.
So I'm really excited to try to be inclusive to girls and create a program, hopefully through my expertise, to give kids that wonderful experience, and then we hook them in sport for life.
So let's talk about elite versus grassroots, because this is right in my bailiwick. This
Yeah.
is what I spend most of my time. I think on most of our sports, I think our elites are not our problem.
No,
I think our elites get taken care of. Where I worry is the grassroots, the bottom of the pyramid. The top of the pyramid will always be there, but you got to build out that base. Does lacrosse do a good enough job building out that base of just getting young kids in and not having to be a Raider, not having to be a Roughneck, but just lacrosse for life?
well, I think that's what's lacking in sports. The winning has taken over
Mm-hmm.
everything in sports.
Yep.
Sports should be about, if I'm 40 years old, I can go play pickup lacrosse.
Right.
That's what's true sports. Sports isn't about
Sport for life.
Sport for life.
Yeah.
And the sport for life is crashing down, mainly, I think, because parents are really driving winning is successful. If you don't win, that's what sports is about. And that's what it's not about. So lacrosse is doing a much better job recently with try lacrosse, scoop lacrosse. But it's when parents get involved, they take it to the umpteenth level so quickly that it's just like, hey, man, let's come out and just play. Even this year with the U9, they said, oh, we got to play all these games. I'm like, I will create an experience for kids if we don't play one game, because the kids will want to come back.
Yep.
We're going to have fun. We're going to practice basic skills. We're going to do skills that I can take to my neighborhood kids and throw out a few sticks in the cul-de-sac and say, hey, let's do some cradling. Let's do some shooting.
Exactly.
So is it getting better? Yes. But I don't know as a society how we can get removed from winning, because you must see it. It's insane.
It is absolutely insane.
It's crazy.
Tom Ferry from the Aspen Institute, I quote it all the time. North American sports are built for the adult, not the kid. But North American youth sports are built for the adult, not the kid. It's not the kid that needs a third jersey. It's not the kid that needs to go to a tournament. It's not. Oh, that what was it, 6-7 years ago, there was some Adam team doing beep tests before and I was like, I got a text. I was ranting on it. Somebody texted me back. Oh, my kid loves. No, your kid doesn't. Like you do. You think it's, and it's not all parents, but unfortunately it's what happens when you get a group together. If some start to do it, everybody feels like they're compelled to do it. And I think that's why you have dropout rates. I think that's why we're talking about the pyramids. I think that's why you have exhaustion. And be perfectly honest, I think that's why we have diversity issues. I really do. Because I think there's some cultures that look at it and go, I want nothing to do with that. Right. And I'm not talking about any particular sport. I'm just saying, there's certain sports you look at, you go, oof, I'm not paying for that.
Well, and I'm guilty in it as anyone. Being a young parent, it's funny. We were talking about it, about how I want to give my kids everything. I want to have them the best experience.
Sure.
And then I was reading something and they said, how many times have you been giving something to your kids without your kid asking for it? And I was like, man, my kids don't need this. My kids don't want this. This is my projection.
Correct.
Thinking that they need this.
Correct.
If my kids want something, they will come ask me for it.
Correct.
So I think that really translates to sports, and it's about finding people in that culture and leadership roles that can promote that. Is it tough? Yes. But you want to talk about being able to impact a sport. Hopefully the things I've learned, I can now take that having young kids and try to implement that. But it's tough. I get caught up on my guilty, and I'm very worried, not worried, but it's going to be very interesting to see how I can bring that back without myself getting focused on that winning aspect.
Well, I mean, look, there's lots of issues, and I'll just throw one more out, because I always say I'm the product of failure. I just don't think we celebrate failure enough. I just don't think, or not celebrate it, but appreciate its impact. Exactly. And that's, again, I don't want Johnny to fail. I don't want Betty to fail. I want them to be as successful as possible. And you see this all the time when it comes. I will absolutely. I don't get it when we get to the selections at the beginning of the year. I'm trying to remember evals. Like nobody. This. I used to get letters and emails from parents to the radio station going, "You got to talk about my kid. He didn't make the Pee Wee team, and it's a big controversy." And the parents don't get it. Like, do you want your kid to be the 13th forward, or your kid want to be the number 1 forward?
Right.
Why? You should embrace. If he didn't make one, let him go dominate 2. Because you and I both know, we've been around. Scouts don't miss. Like, they'll find it. They can play 7-8 level, and if he's the best, they'll find him. The sport always lifts, but we're always pushing the wrong way. We're always pushing from behind. Right?
It's funny you say. I remember Brian Burke, I think it was, saying the cream will always rise to the top.
Rise to the top.
The best players, if they're in Timbuktu, and he's the best player, we're going to find the best player. And I remember when I was the technical director of Alberta Lacrosse, and I put forward, and I said, listen, we need parity across the whole board. Parity. We're going to take all the best players, all the worst players, and we're going to divide them into teams. And you would have thought, oh my God, I said, we're going to chop off the legs of kids. Well, these best kids, I'm saying, you're not listening to what I'm saying. If you want to be an elite, you can go on a separate team, which we're going to create in a different season. So you can still have the elite impact. But what we're going to do is we're going to empower the best kid to help and be a role model, a great teammate, someone that's going to take that skill for the rest of their life in the workforce.
Soft skills you're talking about?
Yeah.
Soft skills.
To help them be a great person. Oh, no, John, you can't do that. We need the best on the best, and the people that can't catch, they need to go together and figure it out. And I'm like, well, no wonder there's segregation. No wonder there's diversity. No wonder Johnny plays lacrosse for 2 years and says, yeah, this sport isn't for me. And I think sports now is in a real predicament with the ability for kids to choose different things. And you're even seeing it now where, man, if kids aren't good or they don't like it, they just quit. And then they're on to coding, and then they're on to mountain biking. When I grew up, there was like 4 sports. You played one here, you played one here. With the choice and the way these things, kids have options nowadays, it's a very interesting time for sports and being able to keep the person in there. And I think creating people, just like you said, sport for life.
Yep.
Let's create great humans for life. So I don't know. It's interesting.
I again, what arena have you gone into? And God love them. They're some of my friends, and I'm not knocking them, but I don't go into arenas and see the bulletin board full of leadership skills camps or teamwork skills camps or whatever. That there's no money in that.
Well, there,
Right?
you just hit a big money is the big one.
No,
too,
it's
right?
revenue. It's all about revenue, but it's back to youth sports are built for the parent, not for the kid.
Yes.
Right. And, you know, it's not all cases, and I'm not painting everybody with a brush, and I get it, but we're all kind of caught up in this rat race. That's what it is. It's a rat race. You know, we don't even get time to stop and think about it half the time. Right. You know, oh, my kid's going to play in this spring league. Oh, I better do that. Did your kid have a nutritionist? What?
Yeah.
I better get a nutritionist.
That's right.
You know, and it's a anywho, I don't know how we ended up there.
Sorry.
But
Yeah,
no,
it was a
don't
rant.
apologize to me. I love it. Okay. Kind of rapid fire, not real rapid fire, but kind of rapid fire. What's the state of the professional lacrosse as a game as you see it? I mean, you got the PLL and you got, you got field in the summer. The NLL's growing, teams in Vegas and things like that, new CBA. When you started to now, are we any closer? It doesn't feel like we're any closer to the next step for professional lacrosse, which would be full-time players.
We're heating up.
Are we?
Trending in the right direction.
Good. Okay.
Really, really good. Great owners, huge registration in the States, which in turn means people.
Mm-hmm.
Collegiate lacrosse adapting box lacrosse. Registration, it will be interesting to see after COVID.
Okay.
But in terms of ownership, the ability for them to put resources and money back into the community, the NLL has never been in a better spot. Just hired a great new commissioner. If we turn on that path, I would say the most productive, most exciting, most fast forward thinking here in the next 5 years, I think it can really take off. Really, really take off.
So you're confident, but why are you confident?
Money, the ability for people to give back resources into the community, which in then turn is allowing people to do greater and broader programs. The problem with lacrosse was there was always this pro league, but then there's nothing to trickle down. The filter down was always all over the place. It's starting to get a lot more organized. The increased numbers in the States is actually a really, really big one. Like the population in Canada is not big enough. It's still such a niche sport to sustain, but there's millions and millions of kids playing lacrosse in the States right now, which is in turn driving the engine.
It wasn't you guys that played San Diego in the outdoor game, was it?
No, it was Vegas.
It was Vegas, right?
Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you make of that?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great for the game, great promotion. San Diego's an interesting city as there's so much to do. But even if you look at the crowds in Vegas, they've been great this year. The model that the Roughnecks have really implied of coming to enjoy the fan experience, because pro sports is so expensive. Like I look to take my kids to an NBA and you're like, this is going to cost me thousands of dollars. Where it's crazy. So if you want to talk about another issue, that's another show we can come talk
absolutely.
About. But it's in a really good spot. Really good spot.
I had a brief little fling with it for a year, and I came away from it going, be your own game.
Yeah.
Be your own game.
Right.
I still think there's elements of the NLL that chases, other sports. And I'll be I'm not saying anything that I didn't say to Mike Board or anybody else with the Roughnecks or the NLL, to be perfectly honest. It frustrates me that they want to do hockey broadcasts of lacrosse.
Yeah.
Like, and they pat themselves on the back and they go, it's a great it's an absolute great broadcast. It's as good as any American Hockey League or G League broadcast I've seen. Why wouldn't you go out and do something completely different? I think of you all the time. Why even bother chasing that? Why wouldn't you take Twitch? And why wouldn't you say to the Colorado Mammoth, you're off this week, but you and a couple of coaches sitting on Twitch and watch the other games?
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
Just do it differently, because you and I were in Los Angeles. We were in Vancouver with the old I can't even remember, the Ravens,
Ravens,
right?
yeah.
We were doing a game there, and and I remember being a playoff game in 04 down in San Jose, and Tim McAuliffe shows up from the score, and it's been on TV. It's always kind of been that ancillary thing, but it's never been had its own product, its own identity on that side, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think players getting into broadcasting is a big thing. There's not a lot of players right now that have given back to lacrosse. Like I remember,
but there's not a lot of opportunity either.
There's
right?
Zero opportunity, because I even wrote to the commissioner when the commissioner came and met all the teams. I was like, do you guys know you don't even have a telestrator on your TSN broadcast? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, let me give you an example. Here's a clip for 30 seconds. I'm like, instead of saying, oh, Johnny's such a great guy from Mississauga, Ontario. His brother is Tony, who plays with him. I would simply go, hey, I'm going to circle this guy. Watch how he's going to set a pick here. I would draw an X, and I would draw this guy coming around, because the general people have no idea what's going on across. Zero. We haven't created.
Hey, hell, they don't know what's going on in the NFL. Why do you think Tony Romo's been so successful?
That's right.
Because he's been predicting stuff, and look, he's right.
That's right. So there's an avenue which I've actually talked to many teams
about,
and I don't understand, of saying we need to do a better job of explaining what's going on.
But it's safe, Andrew. I mean, it's safe not to try anything. And and I just tweeted out. Well, actually, it was our reading assignment last week. I didn't know you could, if you buy the little blue check mark from Elon, you can now write for 4,000 words or something, or characters. Some dude wrote this huge long tweet about F1. It was bang on. Like, F1 Drive to Survive. In my lifetime, I have never seen a broadcast impact a sport.
Yeah, crazy.
Like it did. Hey, World Juniors, TSN built that absolutely 100%. And, you can talk about the NBA used to be tape recorded and played at midnight. I get all that, but nothing quite like what F1 Drive to Survive. And I hear it all the time. Oh, we got to build our own. Yes, but the thing about those guys is they said, screw that. We're just, I don't care. And I think the NLL and I think you saw that. And I apologize. Is it PLL?
PLL, yeah.
Yeah. They did that, right? They mic'd up players and they were doing stuff. Guess what? They got $12 million from ESPN. The NLL got nothing. They got a platform. They didn't get money, right? You need some of that innovation, don't you?
You have to. Well, and especially nowadays, like the old thing of people not understanding and saying, oh, we don't need to be on Instagram, or we don't need to be on TikTok. Well, then you're 4 steps behind.
Yeah.
You need to find out what, and I think safe. And like you said, and I think failure, I think you hit the nail on the head. If you're going to cap your development as a person or a league or an organization because you're scared of failing, well, then you're never going to achieve your ultimate greatness.
Right.
Sure, you might fail and it might cost you and you might learn, but hopefully what you can derive out of that is, okay, this didn't work. But if 1 + 1 can equal this, then we'll be in a great space. So, and I think back to your point with these new owners, with the amount of money and maybe a little more security, because the NLL was such a fragile thing, folding here and there. There's no team, I think, that's in any danger now of folding. So with that, maybe comes a little more ability to have some more risk.
Yeah. No, again, it's going to be a very competitive marketplace, right? If it isn't already, well, it's already is a very competitive marketplace. Tell me about life as a coach in the non-city in which you work.
Travel is hard.
Okay.
Travel
but
is
you can
tough.
direct to Denver from here.
I am very lucky. It's direct flights. We get great flight times. I think the one thing I've learned in just general living, you really got to be disciplined and focused in terms of, like, I know it sounds like an excuse. People are going to be like, he gets to fly, but it's tough with young kids. And then you come back and you're eating poorly and you might not be exercising. It is a little bit of a challenge. I'm super lucky with the organization. They treat us well. We have elite travel. It's gone are the old days. Like, I'm not flying to Vancouver and then Seattle and then Denver. We're still on like our normal planes, but it definitely is a challenge. I think you become appreciative of the situation and city that you live in. It's definitely opened up. I've got to see amazing places. I've got to learn about a different organization. The Mammoth are owned by a billionaire,
Kroenke,
who's treats us professional. I mean, I don't know if you saw our rings. Our rings were like as nice as the Avs rings. We got this box, which is a lifelong memory. So nothing but positive and great things about the experiencing. But traveling every weekend can be challenging. Yeah, it can.
What about the work though? I mean, video technology being the way it is now, how much has that impacted? How much has Zoom impacted your ability to coach during the week?
Well, it's made the product on the floor much better. So, for example, I'll get the game right away, 24 hours. I've already cut the film. All the guys have had access. I can see who's watching it. Tuesday nights, we get everyone from all over North America on our team. We go through our D-call. So I've already broke down the film. I go through each individual clips of our past game. All the guys are watching it on their screen, which is so much more not only accessible, but it allows us to perform an elite level. Because back in the day, we'd go and we'd have film 20 minutes before the game and say, you got to know this guy's tendency. So now I have all the film cut of our game from the past week. We play Vegas this week, every goal they've scored, organized by players, huge amount. And it's really going in a great direction. So that's really impacted the performance on the floor and allowed these guys to be, it's a lot more professional. Let's put it that way. It's really professionalized the game of lacrosse.
Do you have, now that you have their attention and now that, you have this system in place, do you find that you have to do anything to kind of keep it fresh? The business world went through this. Zoom's great. And then all of a sudden Zoom meetings started, people kind of zoning out and, putting up their cat pictures and stuff like that. What do you do to keep your players engaged?
So 3 things I've learned, even as recently as this year: clips can't be longer than 20 seconds. Players lose attention span. I do 10 clips, 15 clips, and then we have to talk about it, because if I just roll through 40 clips, guys are drifting. Even after we've gone through clips, just video, we really have to go on the floor and walk through it or even draw it out, because everybody learns different. That's one thing I've learned about coaching. I might understand something from watching a video, but other people learn completely different. People have to physically walk through it or draw it on a whiteboard, or I have to get them to explain because it doesn't matter if I know it as the coach.
Yeah.
My job as a coach is to make sure in whatever realm or way I can deliver it, the players understand it. So being a lot more concise and shortening our video clips, because attention span these days, those phones really get you.
Oh, they do. They do. So tell me a little bit about the responsibility of defensive coordinator in your system. How much is put upon your plate by the head coach?
Man, I'm so fortunate. And that's one thing I cannot say enough about Pat Coyle and even our general manager, Brad South. We're super active and lucky being involved in player discussions, who we want on the roster. And that doesn't go, I don't think it's like that in every other team. I really feel like we're a group brought together and have the ability to work as a team. I don't feel segregated to the defensive end. If the O coach says, hey, do you see something being a lacrosse guy? I really feel it's not just blowing wind, that I have the ability to say, hey, I do see this, and that he'll take my opinion. So as a coach, that you can't ask for anything better than that. In terms of responsibility, the DN, Pat Coyle, NLL Hall of Famer, someone who I played with as a defensive mind, we've really gotten a good mesh to kind of work together and get on the same fundamental pace. We have a pretty straightforward system that doesn't have a lot of gray areas. So it's really the ability to go back to true north when we're struggling is really important. I think that's something in lacrosse, looking at other teams that they necessarily don't have. It seems a little bit more mumbo jumbo, a little more gray. We're very clear. This is our role. This is what you need to do in a situation. If we're not successful, here's how we get back to that. And if we are successful, much like the championship last year, this is the formula. Stick to the formula.
4th year, right?
Fourth year, yeah.
Is head coaching the goal here?
For sure. I think head coach or GM is definitely a goal of mine. Coaching in the NLL was the ultimate goal, which I did, and I'm so happy for that. I'm still relatively a young coach in terms of coaches in the NLL. Do I know, will it happen in the next 2, 3, 4 years? I don't know. Will I have to take a break with my kids being young? Possibly. Ultimately, a career goal and life goal of mine is to either be a head coach or GM. Absolutely.
And right now, game below 500?
Yeah.
Okay. But lots of time.
Not lots of time.
Not lots of time.
Running out of runway here.
Are you?
Yeah. We're in back up against the wall, whatever sport analogy you want to use here. So we got
5 weeks or?
Yeah, 5 weeks. I think we got to go 3 or 4 out of 5 here.
But you do have a couple games in hand, don't you?
1 game in hand. In Van wasn't a good one to lose. So yeah, it's been a very trying, tough year. Injuries, championship hangover. Everyone's chasing the big dog, a variety of reasons, like we talked about. It's such a finite thing when you move the dial one way or another, but that's sports.
Yeah.
That's sports.
That's what they say. That's sports. How difficult is it going to be to coach your daughter?
I'm concerned about it. I'm excited about it.
Right.
Like I said, I didn't want her to play lacrosse. I was like, let's wait for next year. And she really came and said, hey, Dad, I really want to play. I think because she sees it, she watches it every weekend. She gets the Mammoth shirt on. I think it's going to be a challenge in not getting expectations like, I'm now coaching my daughter. We have to have the best team. I'm now coaching my daughter. I want her to go be a Div 1 athlete. I think really have the ability to remind myself that she's playing with her friends, she's laughing, she's talking about it 2 days later.
Yeah.
Those are really the important things, but I think I'm going to have to be cognizant of that.
The single bit of advice that I would give you, not that I coach my kids, but even just as a parent, I think we really, really, really underestimate the car ride.
Yeah.
At home.
Great point.
I just think that's one piece that, I can still remember, dad chewing my ass or even praising me. I can still remember those conversations, right? That's such an important one. So make sure you take it easier.
Yes. I think my parents, man, I give my parents, I cannot remember. And I played a lot of sports growing up, multi-sport athlete.
Yeah.
I do not have one memory of my parents ever criticizing me, yelling at me, saying I needed to do something better. Zero memories of that, which in turn looks like, man, they did something right.
Exactly.
I was really fortunate, and look how I turned out.
Yeah,
not that I'm an elite athlete.
Look how you turned out.
But I did okay.
Look how you turned out. But before I let you go, tell the story, because it's one of my favorites. But tell the story about that I told off the top. You were hosting Roughnecks. Kershaw always had bad names for these things.
Roughnecks Radio?
Was it Roughnecks Radio?
Yeah, I think so.
And then you ended it, and you were doing it live on a game day, right?
Yeah. I'd go to shoot around.
Yeah.
Then I'd come to the studio and film and tape it.
Yeah.
Go have a little nap, go to the game.
Right.
Yeah.
But you would have, I don't even think it was one time, but you would have.
Oh, I'd have every week, I'd have someone from the other team on, whether it be a player.
On game day.
Yeah. Whether it be another player coach. Well, that's just relationships. They didn't care. I didn't care. That's the competitive side and saying, hey, man, we're going to use our relationship we've had to talk about the game. And then I'll see you at the game. And now I owe you a beer because you did me a solid.
I guess so. But I mean, I just remember we would talk about that all the time. It's like, oh, well, let's get Daryl Sutter to talk to Craig McTavish. That would be great radio. It was just unheard of at the time. It was, credit Kelly in the sense that he had the idea of putting you on there. So much of that stuff was podcasting before podcasting.
It really was. Yeah,
right?
It really was.
It was.
Because I don't actually know how many people actually would listen, because it was like 12 to 1. I think if you did it now in a different format like we're doing now in the podcast, I think it would actually get a lot more traction.
I absolutely
it would, because there were some great interviews. I actually wish I could find just to have talking to Jeff Shatler when he went to Saskatchewan the first year, and we were just talking like I've been his roommate for 10 years about the funniest thing. He's being honest about the transition. It was really a raw, intimate.
It was. There was no guards up.
There was zero guards up.
There was zero guards
which
up.
is funny to say that now you say it, but it was pretty cool.
No, it was.
Yeah.
It was. It's we the collective need you back on this format somehow.
Well,
we have to find a way.
I felt nervous coming on here. I still feel
nervous,
but it was great I really appreciate the ability to go off and talk more than sports, just about grassroots and all these things. I miss it. So I'd love to get back on. It's great.
Listen, we very rarely even talk about sports around here nowadays.
That's good.
It's so much craziness. Good to see you, pal.
Great to see you. I appreciate
Thank you for doing this.
Of course.
You'll come back, right?
I will.
Okay. Thanks. Andrew McBride, everybody. He of the Colorado Mammoth, the defending NLL champions. But trouble right now. We'll see.
In trouble.
In trouble. It's okay. You and I have been around the NLL long enough to know that, it all comes down to the last week. And then the mini game. Oh, there's no more mini games.
Thank God.
Thank God there's no more mini games. All right. Ryan Pike will join us in a couple of minutes. We are live in the Oodle Noodle studio. Local, loved, delicious. Since opening their first store back in 2005, Oodle Noodle has been all flavor and just the right amount of weird. 2 locations, 1244 17th Avenue Southwest, 105 Main Street North in Airdrie. Pickup and delivery. Today's reading assignment, which I believe is, just got tweeted right now. Pickleball plans, New York City takeover this summer. Pickleball plans, New York City takeover this summer. Doug Greenberg, the front office sports. It's worth, if you're not aware of pickleball, and where have you been if you're not aware of pickleball? They are building 14 courts in Central Park. This is the part that got me. The off-peak rate is $80 an hour. The peak rate is $120 an hour. If you are not paying attention to pickleball, you're missing out on something. So make sure you check that out. And just wanted to bring your attention to a couple things. The Heritage Committee in the Parliament, according to Rick Westhead, got a busy week coming up. Hockey Canada has been given 24 hours to turn over their final report into the 2018 findings of the alleged sexual assault of the World Juniors. So that's worth noting. As well, on Thursday, they'll be bringing in the former leaders of Soccer Canada as they dive deeper into the situation in which Soccer Canada finds itself. And apparently, they are now taking witnesses who are calling for a national inquiry into abuse in sport. So it could be a very, very busy week for the Heritage Committee, and it should be a very, very busy week for the Heritage community. As we say goodbye to our pal, Andrew McBride, joining us. On Wednesday, Cammie Kepke will be here, and on Friday, our very special WrestleMania show. By the way, we are broadcasting today from Treaty 7 territory. And of course, this is an inclusive program. You're welcome. This is a safe spot. We love to have you here, which is actually something I'm going to bring up with our next guest, who joins us courtesy of our good friends and brand new. We added them today. The Ski Cellar and Snowboard, skicellarsnowboard.com is where you go. 76 years in our city, 4 locations, McLeod Trail by Chinook Center, 17th Avenue Southwest, just off of 14th Street, Bow Ridge Road Northwest by the McDonald's at the bottom of Windsport, and in the Frank King Day Lodge at Windsport. And it's not just skis and snowboards. It's all the stuff that you need to keep warm and dry. Great time to get great deals on gear in the springtime for the mountains. And make sure you ask them about those snow skates, because they are something else. He is something else. He joins us now, as he does on every Monday, the managing editor of FlamesNation, Ryan Pike, in studio, kids. He found his way. We left the breadcrumbs. He followed them, and here he is. Finally makes his live in-person debut. You are an actual human being.
Yeah, I feel like
you're not AI generated.
Not usually.
Not usually?
If I was AI generated, I'd be much more clever.
I guess so. I don't know. How are you?
Good. It seems like this is a market these days where stories keep unfolding. It was an eventful weekend. It looks like it'll be another eventful week.
Where would you like to start?
Well, I mean, if you want to start with good news, I mean, Saturday the Flames beat a team they should be beating, and one of their.
Does it matter at this point?
I think until they have a little E next to their name in the standings, I think they're going to keep on scrapping and, give them credit. I mean, Walker Duehr, like we'll probably talk about a collegiate player momentarily, but
it's possible.
But Walker Duehr was a guy that they got from, Minnesota Mankato. They're scouting a bunch of different guys. They got him. They found him. I love these kind of stories. Flames found David Riddick in Czechia when they were scouting Daniel Preibel, noted NHL non-entity Daniel Preibel. He just didn't work out in North America, but they found David Riddick. When they were looking at Connor Mackey, they stumbled upon Walker Duehr, and Walker Duehr has become one of the most consistently fun players to watch in the organization, both when he was with the Wranglers and now. And he had himself a good game. He was, he got to play with Nazem Kadri and former Stanley Cup champion Milan Lucic, made a couple of really nice plays to set up we were talking about, the Flames have been sort of an up and down team. And at times, to use a Simpsonism, they've stepped on some rakes.
Yes.
And they were up 2-0. Everything looked great. All of a sudden, up 2-2. All of a sudden, up 3-2. And then by the time Beasley finished announcing the 3-2 goal, it was 3-3.
Yeah.
That's how quickly they scored. But, if you don't want to have the here we go again feeling in the crowd, on the bench, on social media, that's kind of what you have to do. And Walker Duehr calmed the nerves of a jangled Flames nation of fans. And then he's made a really nice play in the game winner. So, I mean, I don't know what his next contract looks like, but it might be a one-way based on how he's playing. But he's a guy Garnet Hathaway, another one. They found Garnet Hathaway as AHL depth and went, maybe he'll turn into something. They got Walker Duehr as AHL depth and said, maybe he'll turn into something. And two players who play a very similar brand of hockey who turned into somethings.
Well, and because you've covered enough drafts, that drafting and developing your own players is one thing. You also need to try and turn over some rocks. To your point, David Riddick was that. Garnet Hathaway was that. I mean, there was one of those Jay Feaster summer camps. Noel Cherry was there, and there was like 5 guys that would end up. Only one of them, I think, was Garnet was the only one that stayed. But there's guys, they were at least identifying guys that had a potential to do that, make that jump, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, we've talked about the Matthew Phillips dilemma in the past, but I mean, the Flames, all due respect to Daryl Sutter as a coach, he was not a great manager, and I think one of the challenges that he had as a manager was backfilling the pro ranks. I mean, when you're drafting a lot of guys who sort of seem like the same version of the same player, just at a different position, it's really difficult to adjust for, year-to-year variations in how the game is played. And, as a result, the Flames had a lot of work to do when Jay Feaster came in and took over as GM. But I think, first under Jay and now, I think Brad and his staff have done a really nice job too, drafting a bunch of different types of people, different types of players. Like they have, I'd say, I've seen people criticize the 2020 draft, and I think rightfully so. I think everyone has their own idea of what a perfect draft is. But that was a draft where they started off with a first round pick and very little beyond that. And then they traded down twice, got 2 third-round picks. They used 1 third-round pick to get Jake Boltman, who sort of projects as sort of a shutdown defenseman. They got another pick that used on Jeremy Poirier, who's turned into a really nice story in the American League this year. And then they got Connor Zary, who was allegedly the guy they wanted, or at least one of several guys on the list that they'd be happy with getting. And so they got a guy who really fit their needs, and then also were able to address some other things. And as a result, I mean, they're drafting guys in the 7th round who are helping them. They're drafting guys in the 5th, 6th round that help them. They're drafting guys in the higher rounds that help them. And, once the best goalie not playing in the National Hockey League was drafted 4th from last in 2019. I was at that draft. I've never heard a building so quiet. Then a guy's name get announced. Then a few fans go, woo, in the corner, because his family's there. Yeah, because he played in Everett. So his family and a bunch of teammates drove up from the Seattle area for that draft and sat around for a day and a half until he got drafted. But I bet they're feeling pretty good about that now, both him, his camp, and the Flames, because he's on route to probably his 4th year in a row being the best goalie in the league he's playing in. So that's
I mean, it's staggering, his numbers.
He has if you just ignored his non-wins, if you just looked at the games he won, he has 38 wins. He has more wins than all but 4 goalies in the league have starts. Like he has 11. If you just he's played 40, I think 48 or 49 games, maybe 50 at this point. He's just leads the league in, like, last year I was making the joke that he led the league in almost everything. He leads the league in everything: save percentage, wins, minutes, saves, shots.
What's his contract status?
1 more year.
1 more year.
And then he's waiver exempt this year, next year. Actually, the next 2 years after this one. So with goalies, they're waiver exempt.
Still a little, still a little flexibility there.
Yeah.
So, with those numbers, you'd have to think in most organizations you would have got to start by now. Would have got up here.
I mean,
and I'm not critical of it. I just think that's just the way.
Well, I mean, another guy from I can't remember if he's the year before or the year after, but Yaro Askarov, the first rounder from Nashville. He's just dipping his toe into the league now. And I mean, they've had more injuries, but they had Pekka Rinne. They had, I think when you have depth, like when you have a Jacob Markstrom, you have the ability to just hoard guys. And they have Arseny Sergayev in UConn in the NCAA, who had a really nice freshman year. He ended up basically, I think he was about 60-40 for starts with Logan Turnus at UConn. Looks like he might be the starter next year. So Jorgen Siglet often jokes, he's like, I just wish they'd let me have a 7th rounder every year. Like, if with the way goalies are, spend a 6th or 7th rounder on a goalie every couple years and then just let them cook somewhere. And then it's low risk. It's a position with a lot of variability. But circling the square a bit, I mean, Walker Duehr, really nice collegiate player. They they completed a nice bit of business around supper hour on Sunday that I'm sure they're pretty happy with.
Yeah, Matt Coronado gets done. It's one of those ones that, and I remember back to Johnny Gaudreau, it was like, is he going to come? Is he going to sign? Is he, he's always up for the Hobie Baker. Is he going to come? Is he going to sign? And that's the news cycle. And then he gets here and it kind of goes, well, he was always coming here, right?
Well, I remember, you remember, I'm very old. I'm older. I remember the 2011 development camp of Don Hartman. Right after the Flames draft, and people were like, I remember covering that draft for Flames Nation, and the little blurb on him from Central Scouting was, you see his box cars, like he's like, led the league in scoring. I think it was like 3rd or 4th in the league in scoring, rookie of the year, this, that, the other thing. I think he was listed as 5'6", 135, because that's
Mhm.
Central Scouting. For those that don't know, they do a couple camps throughout the year. They do a couple tours throughout the year. So, they I believe as USHL training camp, they go and weigh everybody. So at the beginning of his draft year, he was buck 35.
Yeah.
And I think by the time he was drafted, I think he'd gained some weight. So he was like 145, 150 maybe. And I remember people going, I don't know, he's kind of small,
Mhm.
and sort of poo-pooing the pick. And then as soon as they saw him on the ice at Don Hartman, I remember, people were making jokes because he was being interviewed before. I think Alex Ruiz from Flames TV was interviewing him.
Yeah.
People were like, Alex Ruiz towers over this kid.
Yeah.
What the hell are they thinking?
Yeah.
And then you see him on the ice, you go, oh,
Yep.
and then that turned into the skepticism turned into almost blind panic from the fan base every draft.
He won't come. He won't come.
But I'll give Johnny credit. I mean, Johnny, he always said, 30, it was 30 teams at the time. 30 teams had a chance to draft Johnny Gaudreau. 30 teams, 2 or 3 times went, nah, not this guy, not now, not here. And so Johnny
It's
remembers,
true.
like,
It's true.
for a guy who spent his entire, Gaudreau is both the most talented player in his team and the smallest player in the team, basically since he started playing hockey. Definitely since he started playing high-level organized hockey.
Yep.
And I think 2 things stuck in his craw. People don't believe me, but also the people who did. And, Jay Feaster, Todd Button, and the scouts in that area really liked the player. They tried not to tip their hand how much they liked the player.
Yeah,
because,
there was lots of drama on the floor.
Yeah,
I remember it.
Yeah, but they got him, and then
Yep.
they, every year was like, is he going to sign? And every year he went, want to go play a year in college. I want to really improve. It's good. I'm a smaller guy.
Yep.
He went to Boston College. Cam Atkinson went to Boston College.
Yep.
A couple other guys, but Jerry York had a reputation as being kind of a taskmaster and a great structural systems details coach. There's a reason why he won so many national championships. And the thought process from Gaudreau was, I need to get better at like 25 different things. This is the place for me to do it.
Mhm.
Then he was the MVP in I think they won the NCAA championship his first year, and by about Christmas or January of his first year, he's probably the best player in college.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, I still want to get better away from the puck. Maybe one more year. And then after his second year, he's like, well, my brother and I chose Boston College together. He decommitted from Northeastern when the coaching staff changed.
Coaching change, yeah.
And so, he went in, but he was always very consistent. Like, I want, I'm doing this for this reason. And after that, I'll sign. And when he signed, everyone's like, oh, I guess he was being serious. Like, what reason did you have to believe he wasn't being serious? Like, I mean, you're not going to, if local media asked you, are you going to sign? You can hem and haw, or you can lie, or you can just say, no, there's ways to not answer the question that doesn't make people think you're coming.
But remember, they had just gone through the defenseman, the Swedish defenseman.
Tim Eriksson.
Tim Eriksson, thank you.
That was
And that was
poor Jay. The first thing he has to deal with in the job is that whole situation.
And I have no proof, but the fact that he ended up where he ended up always led me to believe there was some shenanigans going on there, but who knows? Because it really didn't happen that often. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a first rounder demanding their way out of town.
Almost never. And some very tidy work. The Flames got extra picks out of it. The Flames got Roman Horak out of it. The player ended up where he wanted to be. Then,
and then failed.
Yeah.
As an NHL player.
Yeah. And I think, imagine that kind of putting that kind of pressure on yourself when you get to choose your spot, or you basically force that hand.
Yep.
And then nothing.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
But the Flames, they go at Granlund and Witherspoon and Horak, and then they turn those guys and other guys. Like, I mean, they got assets out of it.
They sure did.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But I understand the skepticism. I mean, I felt a little bit bad for Matt Coronado, because I mean, the second question he was asked in his Zoom availability with us after he got drafted was, so you gonna sign? Because the last guy went to Harvard.
That's right. Adam Fox.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
and that had just happened, did it not?
Adam Fox had been drafted. I think Adam Fox got traded at the 2018 draft.
Right. So not
a couple years,
but it was still fresh in everybody's mind. Yeah.
And I've seen on social media the people going like, oh, they're never going to draft a U.S. kid. They're never going to draft a kid from X, Y, and Z. I'm like, they just want good players. I don't think they I've had long chats with Todd Button about these kind of things, and he's mentioned, like, you do the homework, you ask the players, but I
think the only thing, would you agree, the only thing they're really kind of scared of would be Russian players, in the contract
right now,
sorry, I think not at the top end, and I'm thinking pre-Ukraine and all of that, but But I think there was a while there. I think both Feaster and Tree Living would have taken him if they had a top pick. But I don't know if they wanted to get too far down.
I
Right?
believe they got Rushin Rafikov, and he never came over. He might be the best Russian that never came over. But they drafted Danil Chechelev, and he's here in the organization. Guy from Belarus, Ilya Solovyov, actually was already over here with Saginaw as an import.
Yeah, see,
and he went back to the K, played a year in Minsk, then came back to here. So I mean,
that blows holes in that too. I think you just take the best available player and let the GM take care of
and especially getting down into the weeds a bit. I mean, with European players, I mean, most of them, I think right now for everyone but Russia, you get 4 years after they get drafted for you to sign them. With Russians right now, because there's no formal transfer agreement, you have infinity time. So there's really no downside. I mean, technically speaking, the Flames, have until whenever to, figure out if they want to keep Danil Chechelev or not. I'm pretty sure they're going to make a decision one way or the other because they like the kid and probably don't want to leave him twisting in the wind too much. But that's more of a relationship management thing than a draft rule thing. But yeah, I'm not surprised that Coronado got done because I had been told from folks close to him that the thought process was most guys are 2 and out unless they really love school. It's 2 and out. And he'd gone to the World Juniors. He really took a big step last year after a lot of his teammates went to the Olympics. I think he had two of his older teammates went to play for Team USA in Beijing, and so he got a ton of extra ice time and he made the most of it. He was one of the better players in college, the back half of last year, and now he gets an opportunity.
What should we expect?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
I think he's going to be. I'll say this. I think their experience with Jacob Pelche, I think has really given them the idea, and I think it should. I mean, they did the same with Rasmus Anderson. Keep a guy around, let him practice, let him get comfortable, and then try to put him in a position to be successful. With Pelche, the Flames had the ability to put him in the fourth line with some good players, and I think Pelche's skill set he's kind of Paul Byron-y in that you could put him anywhere and he'll give you quality minutes. Daryl said as much after the fact that everywhere they put him, he's been good. So with Coronado, I mean, you can't really use him in as many situations as Pelche. He's not quite his game is rounded, but I don't think he has as much polish because he's younger. He hasn't played any pro games and those kind of things. But I also think, I mean, he's been playing against, for lack of a better term, grown-ass men. And he's been playing very well against grown-ass men. And I think it's just sort of a question of, who do you want him to play with, what situations? And I think they probably, my guess is they're probably going to wait until they're definitively out of the playoffs in order to throw him in, because I don't think you want to have a kid make his first mistake in the NHL and have that be the reason, or have him think it's the reason.
I get you. I worry a little bit too, because those games don't mean anything. So, and it's tough. I think we can over-evaluate in those games. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But, they have
somebody has to score.
They got Anaheim coming up. They got Chicago coming up. I mean, they have some games that, if you're thinking, especially, they got the back-to-back is Chicago and Winnipeg. So if you have the ability, I think, I think Anaheim at home, you have last change. You can,
you can hide them.
You can hide them. You can do that against Chicago. Chicago is aggressively not good this year, almost on purpose. I think you can do that with that. And especially on a back-to-back where you probably want to, you want to keep your best lineup possible.
Yeah.
If that Winnipeg game is at all meaningful, you want to have everyone possible as fresh as they can. So, having a Coronado for that game one might be helpful.
Well, we're looking at his numbers here, and he's a goal scorer. Is it his release? What is it that makes him successful as a goal scorer?
He's I would say he's up there with Tyler Toffoli in terms of how quick and accurate his release is. Like he's been a dynamo in the power play for them because he gets the puck on his stick, and by the time the goalie realizes he has it, it's behind him. Like he has that kind of release. I think for him, it's just a question of, can he get in positions, against NHL players to do that?
Yeah.
And, that's always one of the challenges. I think, again, the fact, having someone, I think for him, having someone like Pelche, they know each other from development camp. They've, apparently Pelche and Michael Backlund were the first two guys to text Coronado, welcome to the club, which says a lot about both those guys in a lot of specific ways.
Sure does.
One of them's not, actually neither of them is really surprising considering what we know about them.
And both should have had the honor, or will have the honor of wearing the C, but probably not going to happen now. Yeah. Pelche might, but
we'll see.
We'll see.
But right. I mean, having someone like Pelche around who is gone through it, knows the system, knows this and the other thing, knows what Daryl likes, knows how to. I think having, it's such, I would say it's a group that the youngest guy in the organization on the roster outside of Pelche is Ruzicka, who's 23, almost 24. And so having one or two guys who are in their early 20s, who know each other, who've been through this, who've been through World Juniors, who've been through a lot of things. I think there's a lot of commonalities between those two players. And I think potentially they could really help each other succeed. And, to be honest, I wouldn't be shocked to see them play together at some point this season, because I think they have so many complementarities in their game and in their personalities that I think could really help each other.
Let's leave the big club. Let's talk about the Wranglers, because it looks like we might be watching the Wranglers for a while. Just rolling through.
They're pushing for a division title for the second year in a row.
They are. And then up and down, there's all kinds of stories. We talked a little bit about Wolf. I don't know how much more is to add there. The next step is for him to get a taste of the NHL. I don't think it's for him to move to the NHL. I think he still starts the American Hockey League next year, but I think you want to start.
I'll say this could, depending on what happens with the big club over the next 8 games, this could be a really transformative offseason, front office, bench.
Well, we can start there too, because that was another question I was going to ask you. Is we don't know who's going to be running it. We don't know what the philosophy is. But am I out of the realm of possibility here to be considering that there might be 4 or 5 guys that could make a jump next year? Not necessarily the beginning.
Just from a salary cap perspective, I think right now they have, if they backfill their open spots with league minimum contracts, and they won't, they'll probably use more expensive guys than that. If you backfill with league minimum contracts, they're about $1.5 million over the salary cap. And, Brad Treliving at least has tended to like to have about 2.5 thereabouts $1 million in the cap space.
Yeah.
So you're probably looking at, between now and whenever the season starts, assuming that Brad is either here or someone with a similar philosophy is running the show, you're looking at probably jettisoning $4.5 million in existing contracts just to give yourself wiggle room. And so that could mean any number of things. I mean, the Flames have, a starting goaltender who, was runner-up for the Vezina last year, who's been very, very good the last 6 weeks or so. They have a backup goalie who's cost controlled at a very nice number, who's still got a lot of upside. I'm pretty sure if someone calls the Flames asking about Wolf, they'll get hung up on.
Yeah.
But if you talk to them about either of those 2 other goalies, I think they listen. I think, they have a bunch of forwards. They have a bunch of defensemen who are a year away from expiry. So you got to figure out, A, who's running the show. And B, once you figure that out, how many of these guys want to stick around and at what number.
Right.
And once you kind of do that legwork, okay, we're heading into an entry draft in Nashville where, I've joked about this on social media. That week's going to be such a cluster, because
I see it.
Monday's the awards, Tuesday's the general manager meeting where they're going to, tell everyone, okay, here's your cap number for next year. And we're not anticipating it to be very high. And so Wednesday, Thursday are the draft. Friday is the end of the buyout period, and and it's when qualifying offers are due for free agents. And then Saturday, Jerome McGinley's birthday, they start the July 1st frenzy again. So there's going to be like a 6-day period where everything happens. And so you're going to have a lot of teams going to Nashville going, please let that cap number go up. Then they'll get told the cap number, everyone will curse, and then everyone will get on their phone being like, hey, can you help us out? So if you're the Flames, if you haven't had a great year, a lot of weird stuff has gone wrong, but I think the fact that it happened now gives you the ability to sort of have those tough conversations and go, what are we doing? What do we want to do in a year, 2, 3 years? What does that look like from a cap perspective? What's it look like from player development? The fact is, you got Coronado in. Where does Coronado slot in? Connor Zeri's, 12th or 13th in scoring in the American League right now as a second-year pro.
You watched him.
He slot in?
Could he play at the next level?
He's pretty close.
He's pretty close.
Yeah. He might need a little bit more polish.
Sure.
But he if you threw him in now, he'd be just fine. I think they want him to be better than just fine.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But they have a lot of guys who are probably maybe a couple months away. I would say this. Connor Zeri, if you give him a couple months as the go-to guy in that club next year, like say, October, November, by
assuming
Christmas,
Phillips goes somewhere else.
Yeah. By Christmas, I think he might be ready.
Okay. What about Jeremy Poirier?
Oh man, he's so good in the power play. His puck handling in the offensive zone is very good. His puck handling in the other 2 zones, kind of iffy. He reminds me at times about, first 2 years of Shillington in North America.
Okay.
But offensively, like, this is what we were told to expect from him from his experience in the Q. Crackerjack offensive player, very good, very creative, very consistent. It's just his anticipation of things away from the play needs a little bit of work. But, compared to how he started the season, he's made big strides.
Sure.
And, he's with a head coach there that if he plays poorly, he'll get told very bluntly what he needs to improve. And I think, that's been a really good environment for him because, he's improved in that respect. Yan Kuznetsov has improved. Ilya Solovyov might be the story that no one's really talking about, where he might be, getting close to pushing for third pairing duties in the NHL because, he's basically, I describe him as a black hole. Nothing happens for either team when he's on the ice, especially the other team. And if you're, the current head coach or most head coaches in the National Hockey League, if you say we got a 22-year-old kid who's played in the KHL, played a couple years in the AHL, and when you throw him on the ice, the other team can't get anything going. Good. That's kind of
so
what
he could that being the case, he could be a seventh defenseman because you wouldn't want Poirier in that. If you still need to round him out, he's got to play not unlike the conversation we had with Zeri, right?
Yeah, and I think Poirier probably needs another year, maybe half a year, but they have a lot of guys who are projects, but a lot of guys who are projects who are starting to make really nice strides. And, it's just a question of the consistency aspect of it, which is probably, that's always the hardest part to get to. I think Adam Ruzicka turned into a very good AHLer, but even at the NHL level, he still had those ups and downs in his game, which is why he's not in the lineup as often as he probably might like to be. But they have a lot of, and we talked about, the Flames' ability to backfill the organization. They have a lot of guys who can play a lot of different roles. It's not like you're going, oh, this guy, Kuznetsov might not want him to be on your power play, but if he's your PK guy, he can be pretty good. He's sort of more of a depth guy right now because of his offensive upside, not quite rounding out yet, but he could fill a role. They have guys who can kill penalties. Like they've used a lot of different young guys in a lot of different situations to the point where they can do a lot of different things. So if somebody gets hurt, you have like 3 or 4 different options in terms of, okay, what kind of skills do you need to bring in to fill in gaps?
But they don't have, and part of it's because of where they draft, but they don't have game breakers.
No.
Right.
I would say they have a bunch of I think the closest thing to a game breaker is Wolf. They from the forward ranks.
In fairness,
it's like, if you're like, do they have a Matthew Tkachuk in the organization? No, not because they haven't drafted. They've drafted in the teens and the 20s where you don't get them, but you get Pelche, who once he rounds out, can be a really reliable player. Zari's probably in the same boat. Coronado is a bit more of a goal scorer, but he's sort of in the same boat, sort of second, third line guys who can sort of fill in a lot of gaps. They don't have a lot of first line, first pairing guys, but they have a lot of guys that can fill in pretty much everywhere else.
Sure. And that would be my criticism. And I think that's been Daryl's criticism of this team is that they don't have first line guys. Lindholm, maybe.
I mean, they I think even last year, they had the choice of drafting. Actually, they were drafted in the late 20s and they went, let's just go get Tyler Toffoli.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So I think that's the, that's the challenge of sort of being in that mix. And, they had those guys they drafted high. Like they had, they got a lot of games out of Monahan. They got a lot of games out of Tkachuk. They got a lot of games out of Bennett. I don't think Bennett really turned out as well as the other two guys did, but he was still a really, useful, valuable player. And then you flip the assets and then you're sort of left with what you have.
It's still crazy to me. And it'll probably be crazy to you, the fact that this organization has never drafted higher than 4th.
I mean, not in Calgary. No,
this franchise in Calgary has never drafted north of 4th.
Yeah. And even like they drafted, I think, second twice in the 70s, and that's it. And granted, Cliff Fletcher did a very nice job drafting.
They did, but it's compounded by your number one rival drafted first overall 4 times in 6 years or whatever it was.
And they completely whiffed on Niall Yakupov, and they still ended up with a bunch of really good players. And I think that's.
Competent drafting there would have been interesting to watch.
It's ironic because you could sort of make the argument that they've sort of succeeded in the things the Flames haven't had an opportunity to do and not been as good. Like until very recently, the Oilers have been very good at drafting those other areas, like the depth guys, the goalies. And so, if you combine the two Alberta teams, they're almost perfect to draft.
They're very good drafting teams. Absolutely.
They're very good. It's just a matter of make sure you win lotteries and make sure that, when you don't win lotteries, you can find the best goalie in the world in the 7th round.
What do you think happens, assuming that the big club doesn't make it, which the percentages are against, but the American League team goes? You think it becomes a little bit like the later rounds for the Hitman when they get going? You think we could see bigger crowds at the Dome?
I think so. I think the nice thing is, especially on the weekend games, the folks who've been going to Wranglers games are very vocal about how much fun they have at the Wranglers games.
Good.
And it's a good atmosphere. You got a lot of kids. You got a lot of, anytime there's any kind of scrum, you get like the little kids shouting, fight, fight, fight.
Yeah.
And, it's energetic. There's a different vibe in the building than there is for Flames games. And I think maybe it's the price point. Maybe it's the, the boisterousness of the hockey, the boisterousness of the crowd. They've done a really nice job. And I'm really curious, now, like, okay, like I think the attention will obviously sort of, move over to the AHL club once they're all done.
Mhm.
But, next season I think will be fascinating because, the stuff for the Wranglers got finalized relatively late, probably much later than they really wanted it to because of copyrights and other things they had to deal with. And they couldn't do jersey stuff because of the supply chain issues. Like there was a bunch of, if you were going to launch a franchise because of external factors, they were hindered in almost every way you can be hindered. And they still have had a very successful first season. So they have a lot of, very well, they have a lot of smart folks on the business side of that team. I am really curious the lessons they learned from this because, they've basically just tried to, let's just, run things and see how they go. And I think they've learned a lot of lessons, and how they apply those lessons are going to be really fascinating because, in an ideal world, I think there's some, I think there's enough bandwidth, enough oxygen, enough fans, enough money, enough everything for the Hitmen and the Flames and the Wranglers and potentially a women's pro team to coexist and really complement each other and, give people different things at different places.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah,
That's the way it should be. You should be, different price points and different, to me that they're still too close. And, in full disclosure, I was there when this was all going on. They're still marketed too close to the junior club. They need to break apart and find different identities, I think, for long-term success.
Yeah.
Because I think you're just robbing Peter to pay Paul at this point. But hopefully, like you say, those weekend crowds are great.
Yeah.
But those midweek crowds, terrible.
Yeah. And it's just a question of how do you, I think the Friday afternoon games are really fun. And I think,
I do too. Yeah,
but so
absolutely.
Like, I just think you could do different stuff with Hitman on week. I think experimenting as much as you can, like the NHL, you're basically, here's the days the NHL needs. The TV deals say we need these days. The building says we need these days. The NHL schedule's done months and months. The NHL schedule for next season is almost done. I think they've circulated a few drafts already.
Yeah.
And then everyone else has to fill in the days that are left.
Oh,
but based on what's left, I think the Hitmen and the Wranglers can do a really nice job complementing each other, like experimenting in different ways and having, granted, I mean, Hitmen are going to the playoffs. I think that's going to be, I don't think they're going to last very long simply because they don't have they're a lower seed. They don't have the star power, the game burgers that other teams in their division do. Or to be blunt, we're being honest here. Everyone in the West right now everyone in the Western League is basically playing to lose to Kamloops or to Seattle.
Yep.
And
maybe Winnipeg if you're in the East.
Maybe Winnipeg.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the Hitmen are kind of lucky they didn't finish 8th.
Oh,
because
you don't have to.
That would be.
But what a wild swing, right?
Yeah.
You finish 8th and you get to go to Winnipeg. You finish 7th and you get to go to Red Deer.
Yeah.
So
you probably have a fighting chance against Red Deer.
You might.
I've seen weirder things happen.
Absolutely, especially in the first round of the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the first round of the playoffs.
But I mean, you have especially as those, the Hitmen have always been kind of dependent on, as a drawing card, NHL prospects, or up and coming draft players. I mean, this was sort of a unicorn kind of year where everyone knew that Connor Bedard was the be all end all.
Yep.
And so everyone in the West, everyone in the Dub made some nice money off that kid. And,
yes, they did.
And you know what? He's going to get paid too very shortly.
But
so
not from them.
Oh no, but
it's churning.
It's in the same ecosystem. Yeah, I think everyone's getting taken care of in that situation. But it's a question of, okay, well, going forward, do the Hitmen have anyone coming up, or there's anyone else coming up in the Dub? It's supposed to be a good couple of years in the Dub for draftees. And so, if Flames kids come through, if they get anyone prominent from the West drafted this year, maybe that helps. Maybe, you have some other up and comers come in, different age groups, but it's I think minor and junior sports is such a challenging environment because, you're going to be secondary, but secondary doesn't have to mean, not as good. Secondary just means you're not front of mind with the fans as much.
Well, it sounds like you should be talking to the CFL. Right? Is that not the CFL conversation?
Yeah.
Right. In so many ways, it's a CFL conversation.
That's more of a Danny Austin question, but
yes, but
yeah,
but I mean, I saw it again blow up on social media this weekend. What is it? It's our league. Yeah, but it's a second tier league, I guess. You know, the CBL, the CPL,
Yeah.
they all have to go through that. Like, you know, the funny thing about domestic leagues is hockey, because we're dominant, we don't pay attention. But to be a soccer power, you have to have domestic leagues.
Yeah.
We don't. We do, but we haven't.
It's getting there.
It's getting there, right? The same thing with basketball. You have to have a domestic league and a feeder league,
Yeah.
right? Cricket. Doesn't matter. You have to rugby. You need places for sports to play. Right?
I think one of the things, you know, we always talk about, you know, I think in the National Hockey League context, we always talk about, you know, expansion teams and sort of the building process that expansion teams have to go forth with. I think to a lot of extent, you know, I think because of that, we sort of conceptualized rebuilds in sort of a similar way. I think for Canadian soccer, now that we sort of have CPL sort of here and developing and becoming more and more prominent, okay, so it's a stepwise progression and figuring out ways to sort of, you know, leverage the opportunities to improve that stepwise progression. I think, you know, Jason Ribeiro and his friends are going to have a fun time with that, with the CBL, in terms of, okay, now that you're here, what does year 1 look like? What does year 2 look like? What does year 3 look like? And, you know, it's going to be fascinating to watch, because I think all these different entities in town, you know, there's it's not like suddenly everyone's going to have more disposable income, but can you figure out ways to help each other? Can you figure out complementarities? Can you figure out lessons that you can teach each other without, you know, if I see somebody get kicked in the face, I'm going to learn how to not get kicked in the face. Can everyone learn from the mistakes and the successes that they're all having and find a way to really help each other out?
The answer to that is no, historically. Right? Give me the example of where that.
I can't think.
Give me no. I can't.
That's what I'm thinking. An idea.
No, I can't think of it either. But I know exactly. I know exactly what you're saying. Back to the big club just for a second, because two things that I wanted to talk to you about. 900 games for Michael Backlund.
He's been good for 850 something of those.
He really has.
Yeah, he's
but he's also, I think, to be perfectly honest, I think Michael Backlund's the example of patience.
Yeah.
Because when you go back, and I was at the draft in 2007, and I talked to him.
That hair, my goodness, that hair.
I know, we all had it back then. But it's the best example of, he was exactly what every draft publication, he has become exactly what every draft publication said he could be.
Yep.
Good second line center, 200-foot game, responsible, little bit of offensive upside, good defensively. That's what everybody said about him when he was going to get drafted in 2007. 900 games later, he is exactly that.
Yeah, he's in the Selke conversation this year. I think Daryl made a comment that I think was very, very astute, where if they were a better team, he'd probably be on a lot more ballots. I think he'll be.
I agree.
He'd be on a few, but I mean, you know, we made the comment with Mark Giordano, and he got the C. Like, most players don't get better in the 30s. The age curve for most of us works the other way,
100%,
dramatically so.
100%.
And most players don't get better when they put a C on, because, you know, Daryl's mentioned this in the past, you know, especially in Canadian market, there's a lot of demands on you, media, off ice, community stuff. Like, your time isn't really your own when you're wearing a letter, especially wearing that letter in this market. And, you know, Jerome was very good for a long time, and he left the big shadow, and it'd be natural to be like, oh, this guy's not quite as good. I think Giordano was better in some ways and not quite as good in some ways.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
But I think with Backlund, I mean, Backlund's worn a letter. You know, he's been an alternate since 2018. You know, he's basically been for lack of a better term, the regear to Giordano's Aginla for much of that tenure.
Yep.
And I think now he's sort of playing a bit more of a prominent role, but you know, he's been off the ice as good a citizen as you could hope for. On the ice, he's been, you know, they've given him, you know, the capital T tough minutes, and he's been relied on to boost guys up. He's been, you know, relied on. He taught young Matthew Tkachuk two-way hockey. He taught, you know, Mangiapane two-way hockey. He's been, you know, he'll probably be relied upon before his time is up to play with Coronado and Pelche and sort of bring those up. Maybe Zari too. Like, he's the guy who can help out a lot of guys. I think Matt Station did that role too for a lot of the Flames tenure before,
especially for centermen.
Especially for centermen.
Yeah.
I had a long chat with a lot of those young guys from the OHL who grew up playing with him. And I got a nice note back from his agent, and also a note saying, "Thanks for making me feel old." From that. But I think that's the thing. So I think with Backlund, I mean, you know, if you're, you know, we always bristle about like, oh, player X isn't what we hoped he'd be. You know, we expect very, very rarely. Like, Sean Monahan was basically an NHL player when they got him. He didn't really need to do a lot. He filled out a bit. He gained about 12 pounds of muscle over the summer. That helped. But Same with Kachuk. Like a lot of these guys, if you're drafting in the single digits, you're probably gonna get guys that are pretty close to ready to go. And then if you're drafting in the teens, especially the 20s, take some time. And I'll give Backlund a lot of credit. He was asked to go learn two-way hockey. He was asked to play fourth line minutes. He was asked to play with guys who were checkers. He played with a lot of what people would call unskilled players. And in the NHL, there's no such thing as unskilled players.
That's complimentary.
In the NHL, there's no such thing as unskilled players.
Yes.
But, I played pickup hockey against Brian McGrattan once and thought I was going to die because I'm not in the best shape. But
but there's a point, but your point's well taken.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think, if you come into the league with an ego and think I'm so-and-so, I should be playing with X, Y, and Z, and you get told you're going to be playing on the fourth line, you're going to be, 10 minutes a night, see how you do. It can be a kick in the teeth a bit. It can be a bit of an ego hit. And a lot of these young guys, I think the ones that succeed in those roles are the guys that figure out, okay, I don't know everything. Let's use this as an opportunity.
We had Andrew McBride in before you, and he was talking about, like, he played all his entire career in Calgary, and that's those unicorn, that doesn't happen, right? And I asked him, I said, if you hadn't won 2 cups previous in your NLL experience, would you have left at the end to chase? He goes, absolutely. Do you think that there's any part of Backlund that hits 900 games now and goes, because I'd love to see him. Wouldn't that be a great story? Drafted, max tournament, drafted, plays 1,000+ games, ends up your captain and then retires. That's a fantasy story for me. Or is there any part of him that would go, okay, I've done this. Now I want to go chase a little bit?
I think he might end up being in a similar situation as Jerome McGinley was, where, A. Feaster always joked that he didn't want to be known as the guy that traded Jerome McGinley. It just turned out that way because, he was brought in and that he was trying to maximize the team as best they could. And then eventually Father Time caught up with them. They kind of ran out of gas a bit and had to make some tough decisions in that lockout season. And, I think this offseason will be very fascinating because, what does a group look like? What is, I don't know if they're ever going to go full rebuild, but if they're thinking, okay, make certain kinds of changes, maybe if I think I'll say this, I think whoever's in charge of the organization when decisions have to be made, there's a lot of affection within the organization, I think up and down for number 11.
Yeah.
And I think, if they feel he has an opportunity here to do something, I think they're going to do what they can to take care of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I don't think that getting him out of town is going to ever be a high priority because of how beloved he is. No. But I think if they feel,
because he's one of the guys that's up next, not this year, but up next. Yeah.
But I think, if they're in a situation where they're like, okay, we're not really sure if we have it right now, do you want to take a look and see what else is there? He has I think a limited no trade. So he has some control over where he goes. And I think that's probably a conversation that they have during the offseason in terms of who they have, how they maximize them, and how do they put the people they really value into places they can be successful. And I'm sure they're hoping, plan A is the place that they're going to be successful is here, but failing that, can they put, specific people in areas where they can be successful and have a chance to do something?
Last one before I let you go. Some of us have been waiting. I'm not sure this was a story, but the NHL so badly fumbled the Pride jersey story in the last month that I guess it was, but the Flames announced today they will be wearing, and I don't know, have you seen them?
Oh yeah, they're really nice.
They're really nice.
They did a really.
Actually, you did. You put out a great tweet about that.
Yeah. They've done the Flames have done such a good job with their alternate. The NHL has very weird rules about what you are and are not allowed to sell, and I'll never understand them. I thought the Black History jersey was fantastic.
Me too.
The
Indigenous,
the Indigenous one's fantastic.
Yep.
The Chinese New Year one, the moon. I forget the exact term. I apologize for not remembering the exact term, but they've all been fantastic and unique in different ways, and sort of use a lot of cool iconography in really unique and eye-catching ways. I don't love I think if I was a broadcaster, I'd see the name bars and the numbers and go, thank goodness I'm not using these in the game. That's the only criticism I have. The rainbow pattern.
Yeah, I'd like to see them in the games, but I think if you're going to do that, that has to be part of the consideration.
But for what they're used for,
these
are gorgeous.
So 2 things out of that. Were you at the availability today?
I was not.
Okay. I love, because this particular conversation, I don't know if you're aware, but strikes a lot of chords, and it does make for some interesting texts or tweets that I have received. But if you're going to be on one side and Daryl Sutter's on the other side of this, like, give your freaking head a shake. And that's not a knock against Daryl, but I don't know how else you can say it better than Daryl said it today. Like, fine. Like we're all in. We're doing this as a team. This is what we do. Like, you know, nobody exemplifies, you know, it's for everybody better than Daryl, quite honestly.
Yeah. And, you know, it's, you know, the NHL, you know, from a pure moral standpoint, you want to not exclude people from your game because hockey should be for everyone. From a business standpoint, the NHL would love to make as much money as humanly possible, in part because they love money and in part because they really think of themselves as the stewards of the game. And revenue is one of the ways they sort of benchmark how well they're growing it.
Yeah.
So from a business standpoint, they would like everyone to be comfortable, and if not just comfortable, you know, very enthusiastic about coming into their spaces and spending time, spending money, and getting involved and engaged.
They've done a piss poor job of that in the last month.
And that's
so here, let me.
Isn't that the most frustrating part of it?
Here, okay, but I thought this was interesting. This is not my idea, but Kevin Hodgson, my friend from Heroes, called me last week and we were talking about this, and I'll run it by you and see what you think.
Okay.
What if a team identified 15 causes in a year, did 15 practice jerseys, and then said to the players, pick them. Pick them. You know, pride's important to you. Wear it for 41 games at home. The warm-up jersey. Just have those causes. Not unlike in the NFL, where the players can do the cleats for a cause. What if you had a set of cause jerseys and just said to the players, okay, you know, Eric Stahl, you don't want to support pride? Fine. Here's a cancer awareness. Do something.
That could work.
What if you had that? To me, that would, and I'm listening to Kevin explain this to me, and I'm going, this is brilliant, because then there's a little ownership to this, right?
Yeah.
I'm not just saying, oh, I'm just skating around wearing a jersey because the team told me to skate around and wear a jersey.
That's kind of what they do with the 50-50s. I mean, the 50-50 draws that most of the teams do, they sort of have a tie into a local charity, a local event, and they have, you know, sometimes they have sort of bigger things like scaffold on top of them.
Sure.
But they really do a lot to integrate it in the local community and sort of get boots on the ground. And yeah, I think there's
something to that. Like you could wear, you know, you might wear all of them.
Yeah.
All year. I'm just going to keep alternating because I think they're all important. Or, you know, I lost somebody to breast cancer, so I'm going to wear a pink one all year. And I just, part of what it is there's two things at work. There is no way the NHLPA and the NHL is going to allow this to happen next year. They're going to,
God, I hope not.
No, but I mean, they're going to go the opposite. They're going to say, we're just not doing it anymore. You know, we don't want to, that's not fair to James Reimer. That's not fair to the Stalls. We're not going to do this anymore. I've seen this movie so many times.
Yeah. And well, because the you know, the storytelling is basically focused on the exceptional. Right now, the exceptional is the people who aren't taking part.
Correct.
Whereas with Kevin's idea, if you have, say, you know, like, you know, everyone's wearing the regular practice jerseys, but 2 or 3 of them are wearing the special ones, the storytelling becomes, hey, Mackenzie Weegar, I know that you're wearing today. You're wearing a special jersey. What's that about? Tell us about this cause. Tell us about your story. Your link to that. I think it
Michael Backlund, like Michael Backlund's the ambassador for Parachutes for Pets. Maybe he wears one for pets, and exactly that. Why is that so important to you? It could create some conversation. Again, it's an idea that makes too much sense.
Yeah, the logistically, as long as you can get the equipment managers on board. I think that'd be the challenge, as long as it's manageable for the equipment manager. Because if you have 32 guys wearing 32 different
I'm saying at home, at home. And I know what you're saying about equipment managers, and I'm sure that Ozzy or Depot are probably, you know, somebody's going to tell them about this, and they're going to want to burn me in effigy. But I think, you know, and the other part of this, well, we can't do that. We're all part of a team. We're a team. We're a team. We're a team. We got to look and dress as like a team. We're a team. I think it's a brilliant idea. You see what got announced for August today?
I did.
So you tell me what okay.
Is it? I find it very, very interesting that happens. We're getting that announced a few weeks after the other guys are coming.
Yeah. So, okay. I'll just let everybody know that this segment with our guest, Ryan Pike, was brought to you by Ski Cellar Snowboard, 76 years in Calgary. Check them out, skicellarsnowboard.com. What we're talking about is it's a television taping of SmackDown. WWE SmackDown is coming here, which would be on the road to SummerSlam.
I think it's the first Friday after SummerSlam.
Oh, it's after SummerSlam.
Yeah, it's the first Friday after SummerSlam.
Don't do. Oh, okay, well, Ryan can't see this. 35 years ago today, WrestleMania 4. And you remember what happened to two guys with deep Calgary ties, a Calgarian and another guy who spent a lot of time here?
I mean, like WrestleMania 4 was that terrible tournament, right?
It was a terrible tournament, yes, but this was where Bad News at the time.
Bret Hart won the.
No, he didn't. Bad News did,
and then he snapped
and he snapped a trophy. That's right. Of course, Bret being from Calgary and Bad News spending so much time here, part of Stampede, right? So what we were talking about is SmackDown's coming. AEW is here. It's Stampede time, but not a show. Not a TV taping or a pay-per-view. So it's a house show.
It's a new concept they're doing. They're calling it House Rules.
Okay.
They say it's more than a regular house show, which I don't know what that means, but we'll see.
It's kind of like Famine for a long, because didn't they move some of the WWE house shows over to the Corral?
The last time the WWE was in town, I think the last Corral show is 2018 or 2019.
And it was the Corral, right?
In the Corral. They haven't done the Saddle-Umps in either 2015 or 2016.
Right.
It's been a while.
So almost a decade. Yeah. And now,
and then twice in 6 weeks.
And then, have you been out to a dungeon wrestling show?
I keep meaning to go.
Okay, so the 7th, the 7th at the Pavilion. I went to the last one and I was in heaven.
Yeah,
because the pavilion's full. It was full.
Yeah,
and it was nuts.
It's the new building, right?
No, it's the old pavilion.
In the back.
Yes,
that's a great spot.
It's the old pavilion. It was fantastic. And it doesn't take a lot to fill it, but it's filled, and it was a good card, and it's a lot.
Yeah, they had Nick Aldis in, didn't they?
They had Nick Aldis in. They had Chris Masters in, but they had
Good Friday.
Yeah. But a buddy of ours is going to come on this Friday. He's going to talk about WrestleMania, but Michael Richard Blaze, who
just actually appeared in AEW Dark.
No, he didn't. He did Ms. Force. You're thinking of Michael Allen Richard Clark.
I always mix those two guys up.
But I know why you would. But Michael Blaze just announced over the weekend that in May, up in Edmonton, he's going to wrestle for 8 hours straight to raise money for the children's hospital up there.
How many different opponents? That sounds amazing.
I don't know. That's why we're going to bring him on, because he wrestled on the last dungeon show against Harry Smith and the Billington boys, and he carried it. Him and Harry were just. They were doing all the mechanic work. It was fantastic. He can go. So we're going to have him on Friday. But you should check out the Pavilion. It's a good time.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot coming up.
The last few dungeon wrestling shows, there's been on times where I'm like, I got to do Flame stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So
right.
This might be the summer for me that I check
I get that. But it's just not odd to me. I think you hit the nail on the head. Oh, they're in Calgary. We better they're in Calgary without a house or without a TV taping. We better get to Calgary with a TV taping. Yeah. It's nice to be on the map again. It matters. Right?
I'd say since 2007 or so, since all the Chris Benoit stuff.
Yes.
Western Canada's been a bit of an afterthought.
It has been.
And WCW never came here before they went under. And so I think it's nice to see a little bit of a race to claim territory here.
And I claim 1,000% bias, but I still think the Canadian Stampede back in 1997 was one of the best underrated pay-per-views in WWE history.
It's probably the best B show they've ever done. Best A show they've ever done was WrestleMania 17. Best B show for non-major shows.
No, I was going back to the 80s. You mean the Rock and Roll Express were fighting the Midnight Express and it wasn't Ric Flair on top? But I know exactly what you mean by B show. Yeah. I think because there was only 4 matches, wasn't it?
4 or 5. The main event was the crazy tag match that went like half an hour.
Yeah, and then I think Stone Cold left in the middle of it and came back and stuff like that. So there's some history here, so it's exciting.
Yeah, it's and the nice thing is, the Corral had a lot of wrestling heritage, disappear when it went down, and the Saddle Dome is, as Commissioner Batman has mentioned, very close to the end of its
is
life.
It really?
But I think it's going to be nice to sort of see a few more interesting shows come in before we lay down the curtain on that, pull down the curtain on the Saddle Dome.
I won't lie to you, I'm fascinated to see an AEW show. I'm fascinated by it. I don't know if I like it yet, and it's only been around for 4 years or 5 years.
Has anyone explained Orange Cassidy to you?
I love Orange Cassidy.
He's fantastic.
I think it's one of the great gimmicks of all time, but it's not unlike the Savannah Bananas. You have to commit. You have to. Who commits more to a character?
Who commits to not committing? Is it
the
wrestler that doesn't want to wrestle?
Right, but it's got to be the hardest thing to do, right? Yeah. But I mean, you know, and we probably lost a lot of older crowd, but if you watched last week, Adam Page and Vikingo, did I say that right?
Yeah, Kenny Omega and
Kenny Omega. Yeah, sorry, Ken.
Vikingo.
Yeah, and Vikingo.
Ooh, what a great match.
Was it?
I liked it.
Everybody loved it, but I kept like, there's damn guy nearly died that one time. Like that 6:30.
That's the lucha style, though.
I
the
know.
The lucha style is, how did he not die?
No, but give me a little psychology. And Kenny's not a psychology guy. I get that. He can do it. It's not that he doesn't, but
he can do, I mean, Omega.
He can't. Or sorry,
Omega Okada
I'm
was
screwing it.
68 minutes of psychology.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. Maybe I'm thinking more of his recent stuff, but you know, there's sometimes I turn that thing on and
TV matches are tough to do a lot of psychology in.
But the one thing they do better than the other guy, better than the WWE, is it's like you're not ordering off a menu. You're getting a little bit of everything here, right? Like by the time that 2 hours is done, you've had a spot fest, you've had a little bit of ground and pound, you've had, a good tag team or whatever. You had some good talking. It's a good product. I want to see it live. I just don't know if I like it yet. If that makes any sense.
I'll say this: anyone on the fence, best way to see wrestling is live wrestling.
Oh,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
The nice thing now, starting April 7th.
Yeah,
April 7th. There's some live stuff.
Yeah.
Then we got the big companies coming through, but I mean, Dungeon ain't going anywhere. I think
they're not.
A lot of Dungeons. So.
And I'll tell you right now, when we were there last time, I believe it was Sean Moore was one of the guys that kicked it off, and he's a guy that was on the AEW Dark.
A lot of Western Canadian people.
Right.
Mo Jabari.
Mo Jabari was there. Yeah.
So.
And Zoe Sager, who's really good.
Oh, she's excellent.
She is excellent. She's going to be up there on a main show here. The only thing I think she's more AEW than WWE, but that's just my opinion because she's not tall. Right.
Yeah.
Or NXT. She could be NXT. Right.
The nice thing now is it's a mini boom.
There's options.
There's lots of places for people to work.
There's options, but old guys like me, I want to see some FTR. That's what I want to see.
Hopefully they come up.
Yeah, well, nobody knows where they're going to be. All right. Somehow we ended up and drifted off, but thank you for this.
Thanks for having me.
All right, buddy. Ryan Pike joining us. Our guest brought to you courtesy of Ski Cellar Snowboard, 76 years here in Calgary, including 4 great locations: McLeod Trail, Chinook Center, 17th Avenue Southwest, just off of 14th Street, Bow Ridge Road Northwest by the McDonald's at the bottom of Windsport, and at Windsport at the Frank King Day Lodge, not just for skiers and snowboarders, all of the best stuff to keep you warm and dry. Check them out online, skicellarsnowboard.com. All right, time for the final mile. I want to do, we're going to talk about the wrestling. So 2 things I want to do, and they're both kind of personal. So first of all, let me just say this, very excited. If you follow me on social or you were on social last week, I have joined with the Calgary Surge, the new CEBL team. I'm working with them on a community initiative because I really believe the importance of kids, representation matters, and kids need to see role models and have dreams of one day getting there. So really excited to join Usman and Jason with the team and their staff. And so I'm going to be doing a little bit of work. So anytime we talk about it, I'll make sure that I do reference that, just if it's important, that you know where I'm coming from. But very excited and very proud to be joining that organization as professional basketball comes back to Calgary. I think goes without saying. We have great high school and university ball here. The second thing, and I mentioned it on Friday, I'd be remiss if so there's a lot of connectors to this. So Vicky Hall joined us on Friday. She's going into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame in the media section, and a dear friend. And we were at the end of it, we were talking about her son AJ, who's part of our superheroes program. And I have as I talked to Andrew McBride, I have very definitive beliefs in sport, and I really believe in the importance of soft skills, leadership, teamwork, and respect, and that sport teaches those, or can be a place that you can teach those. So our hockey players, our superheroes hockey players, were wrapping up their year, and on the weekend we joined with another group that I'm working with, Parachutes for Pets, and they were doing a pet food drive and toy drive. Now, we mentioned AJ, who's Vicky's son. He's one of our superhero players. I just want to share a video that he and Vicky put together.
My name is AJ, but my real name is Alexander James. Today, I'm here to get some stuff for people that are that don't have a lot of stuff for dogs and cats. So I chose this because 3 days ago my dog Timmy passed away and he loves tennis ball. So that's I made it this for a dog. That's why I bought this for somebody that has a dog that's having problems. And I think that Timmy's proud of me and I miss him. But that's what my real name is Alexander James Hall, nickname Leo, A or JJ. That's and I'm gonna put this back. So you go.
So proud of the kid. So proud of all of our kids, and so proud of the young boys and girls who were in sport that give back, and we do so much in the community now, which is exciting. Things like the Chrysler Good Deeds Cup, and just teams taking upon themselves to make the lives of those around them better. So I have a platform. I chose to use the platform to highlight the great work of AJ and the rest of our superheroes. Thanks to Andrew McBride. Thanks to Ryan Pike. Wednesday, Cammie Kepke and some special guests. Friday's our big WrestleMania show, which we're looking forward to. Enjoy it. You can catch the podcast anytime. By the way, a big welcome to our new sponsors, as you can see up on, well, not now on the one shot, but on the two shot, you can see Ski Cellar Snowboard, 76 years in Calgary, skicellarsnowboard.com. That's where you go. They're going to take care of you. We are going to see you in a couple of days. Thanks, everybody.
When there's two sides to every coin, then there's a conversation you can join. But I'm an old dog and there's new tricks, and some of my opinions you just can't fix. 'Cause I'm an old man yelling at the sky. I'ma shake my fist at the clouds and cry. Get off my lawn, you snowflake, before I have a meltdown, breakdown, shakedown. 'Cause this is my hometown, so back down, sports clown. It's all just a game, and it's the last down, let down, cowtown. I said it's all just a game. I give the touchdown, the rundown, the lowdown. 'Cause it's over the game, gonna crack down, shut down, the sundown. I said it's all just a